Hi, Crime Junkies. With the 4th of July weekend almost here, we wanted to revisit a few stories that remind us why the fight for justice never stops. One thing all of these cases have in common is that the people at the heart of them refuse to accept that's just the way it is. Whether they're demanding answers, exposing failures in an investigation, pushing for new laws, or making sure a victim's name is never forgotten, these families and advocates remind us that real change often starts with someone refusing to give up. And every time someone speaks up, every time a community keeps asking questions, every time a broken system is challenged, there's hope. Hope for better investigations, better technology, better laws, and more justice for victims and their families. So today, we're revisiting a few Crime Junkie episodes that remind us that progress doesn't happen on its own. It happens because people keep asking questions, demanding answers, and refusing to give up. Let's dive in.
Don't be like it, Big Baba. You gonna get what's coming to you. You son of a...
You're not above the law.
If you've never heard of Amber Spradlin's case, well, then you're probably not from Eastern Kentucky. Because in Floyd County, this case is all people are talking about. For over a year, this could have been considered a whodunit. 6 people went into a house. 1 ends up dead. 1 is covered in blood and failed a polygraph. The one with scratches left the house right around when the murder is thought to have happened. 2 others don't seem to be talking to police at all. And at least 1 is talking, but says that when she went to bed that night, everyone was fine. And a camera that was pointed right at where the crime took place and should have made this an open and shut case is missing. But some people in town never considered this a whodunit. They believe that the person police arrested, the one that's about to go to trial here any day, did the crime he's charged with. A brutal murder of a young woman who had already been dealt one of the toughest hands in life. But there are still so many questions. Mainly why? 38-year-old Amber Spradlin hardly knew these people. Why would someone slit her throat, stab her in the face, and leave her dead, covered in blood, on the couch till morning? And why would a police chief, unconnected to the investigation, allegedly tell Amber's family that she wasn't murdered at all and just died by aspiration? Something in Floyd County stinks. And based on what we've found, this might just be scratching the surface of what's been happening there. So with the trial right around the corner, we're trying to make sense of what happened to Amber Spradlin that night in June of 2023. Amber Spradlin had a tough childhood. Her mom and sister died when she was young, and she was barely into her 20s when she lost her dad. And as you can imagine, all of that trauma left her with pretty severe and sometimes debilitating anxiety and depression. But the family that she did have left, her grandparents, her Aunt Missy, her cousin Debbie, they had all really taken Amber under their wings. And actually, up until recently, Amber lived with her grandparents. But when they too passed away, Amber felt like it was time for her to step out from under her family's wings and finally spread her own. By 2023, at the age of 38, Amber had finally gotten her own place and found a part-time job as a hostess at a popular restaurant in Prestonsburg, Kentucky, where she lived. Now, this was a bit 0 to 60. So Aunt Missy decides that it would be best to keep a close eye on Amber just to make sure she was safe. So she had security cameras installed at Amber's new house to do just that. And Amber was great about communication, too. She is nothing if not predictable, and keeping a strict routine is super important to her. So she made a call every morning to her aunt at 9 a.m., and they would exchange even more calls throughout the day. So when Amber doesn't call Missy on Sunday, June 18th, this bad feeling washes over her right away. Missy checks the footage from Amber's place, and she can see her leaving for work Saturday evening. But as she scrolls through later that night, when she knew Amber should be home from work, then beyond, all the way till she sees daylight, Amber never shows back up on screen. And right away, Missy calls Debbie to tell her what's going on. And Debbie has that same immediate sinking feeling. Something is wrong, and they just know it. Now, Debbie isn't in town. She's on this little getaway 90 minutes away with her fiancé, Brandon. But that doesn't stop her from jumping right into action. Brandon's brother is with the Kentucky State Police, so Brandon actually calls him to tell him Amber's missing. And about 10 minutes later, he gets a call back. And what comes out of his brother's mouth leaves everyone stunned. Amber isn't missing. She's been murdered. Now, he can't give them much more. I mean, the only reason he knows anything about Amber's death is because his agency is handling the investigation. So Debbie and Brandon immediately hop in their car and fly back to Prestonsburg. And by the time they get there, basically everyone in the family has come together. But no one knows anything more. I mean, the wild part is that they're not even supposed to know what little they do.
Right. That's like just through like back channels because they know a person.
Right. No one in any official capacity on the case has notified them, anyone in their family, about what's going on. But thank God for Brandon's brother. So he comes over to give them like the few tidbits of information that he does here. And he tells them that apparently Amber went out the night before and she was murdered by one of the men she was with. So desperate for any help they can get, they reach out to a family friend that's retired from the state police. And he goes on to like make some calls to see if he can find out more information. And what he ends up telling them is even more confusing. Debbie says that this guy called the Prestonsburg police chief, this guy named Randy Woods, and Randy told him that Amber wasn't murdered. He's like, she is dead, but she died because she aspirated, which is basically like if food or something like enters your airway and you stop breathing, like that sort of thing. So Chief Woods is saying that this was an accident. And according to Debbie, he told this friend to tell the family that they should all just settle down.
I'm sorry. Settle down? Like, they were told that she's murdered, and now, she died by accident? Like, this family has every right to not be settled.
And is getting no information.
Well, and also, I thought this was a state police investigation. Why is the chief of the Prestonsburg Police Department, different agency, telling them to settle down? He's like not even involved, right?
Well, so this is a very small town and there's a lot of overlap between agencies. Like they often do help each other out. They respond based on just who's available, it seems like. And Kentucky State Police handles a lot of the suspicious death investigations in smaller towns like Prestonsburg and Martin, which is where the house ends up being that she's at. But it's a little messy because, like, just a quick side story. So the 911 service in Floyd County, it was in flux at the time. So the Kentucky State Police had handled the 911 services for the county for a long time.
Like a while.
But for just the year before, county officials had decided to switch its emergency call center to Prestonsburg because it would be less expensive. So, like, this process is just a little
There's
bit...
like a lot of, like, moving parts that, like, haven't been moving for that long.
Right. Like, this guy still isn't in charge. And the family doesn't know what to believe. Like, they want to hear something straight from KSP.
Right.
No back channeling. Which, by the way, they've been trying to make contact with someone all day. It's their inability to actually get someone official to talk to them that was like necessitating all this back channeling.
Yeah.
But finally, not long before midnight, Missy reaches someone at the state police post and gives them an earful, explaining that they have been hearing rumors all day. They just need to know what's going on. No one has been in contact with them. And whoever she talks to, like, must not be able to give her the answers then or doesn't want to because they have to call her back. And that happens a few hours later. That's when a detective finally gets in touch and says that Amber has been murdered.
I'm sorry, this is going back and forth. Like, what is happening?
They're still not being told anything yet. But she obviously didn't aspirate, and her body is being sent to the state medical examiner. So they do say that they'll know more soon, and the case is under investigation by the Kentucky State Police. Period.
And then?
And nothing. The family is left super in the dark. They just know that Amber left her place for work Saturday night, and by Sunday morning, she's been murdered. Where did it happen? What happened? Did the police have suspects? They were left to guess all of that while they waited for updates. Little did they know, though, right from the jump, state police actually had all of that, and some. because they had been working the case since just after 10:30 a.m. that Sunday morning. And it all started with a 911 call from the home that Amber would be found in. That home is in the town of Martin, Kentucky, and it belonged to then 55-year-old Dr. Michael McKinney II. The doctor is the one who placed the call, and I'm going to read the transcript of it that was included in a court filing. Now, the public hasn't heard this call yet. I haven't heard this call yet, so I'm just going to read it pretty flat because I don't know what the tone was. But Britt, I'm going to have you read for the 911 dispatcher, and I'll read for Michael.
911, where is your emergency?
Yes, so my name is Michael McKinney. I'm at Arkansas Road.
Yes.
I had some people come back to my house last night, and there's a girl on my couch that's dead.
Arkansas Creek?
Yes, so I need some assistance.
All right, I'll get everybody out there.
That's my cell, yes.
Do you know who the female is?
Roy, what's her name? What's her name? I know it's Amber, but what's... And then Roy jumps in here. Amber Spradlin. Amber Spradlin.
Is it obvious, or was it... You think it's drugs, or...
Dude, it looks like somebody's come into the house and murdered her. Her throat slit. There's blood everywhere.
Okay, about how old is she?
How old is she? 32, 33?
All right, I'll get everybody out there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thoughts?
Well, I mean, it sounds like he doesn't even know her. Like, he can't give her last name, doesn't really know how old she is. Also, the phrase, there's a dead girl on my couch, like, what a cold way to refer to anyone, but to refer to this person in your own home.
Yeah, and listen, theoretically, he should know her because the restaurant that Amber was a hostess at, it's called Brick House, and Dr. Michael McKinney owns it.
Oh.
Now, it's probably not weird that he didn't know her last name and age. Like, he didn't even work at the restaurant full time. He's a dentist. The restaurant is just one of his business ventures that help make the McKinneys a wealthy and prominent family in the area. And by the way, Eastern Kentucky has one of the highest poverty rates in the country. So if you have money, people know you. So first responders may have known what house they were pulling up to when they arrived after that 10:30 call was made. Now, Amber is found on the couch, sitting upright. Her head is slumped forward, and her clothes are covered in blood. And once they get a better look at her, like first responders, they could tell that this was not a natural or accidental death. I mean, she had been stabbed and her throat had been cut. And investigators now had 4 people standing in front of them, and one of them was covered in blood. The man covered in blood is a 51-year-old local guy named Roy Kidd. And after getting a lawyer, here's what he tells state police investigators. He'd met Amber years earlier at the medical office in the area where Debbie works as a doctor. Amber volunteered there, and Roy was a radiology technician. Now, he told investigators that he wasn't really close with Amber or anything, and Debbie backed that up. She told us that Roy was nice to Amber, just kind of joked around with her, paid attention to her, but as far as she knew, they didn't even hang out. Now, Roy said he occasionally ran into Amber at the Brick House where she worked, and another bar called Seasons Inn and Restaurant, which was owned by a McKinney family member who he's related to by marriage.
Okay.
But they didn't spend much time together outside of that, except for this particular Saturday. He hadn't really planned on doing anything that night, but Amber had messaged him on Facebook and convinced him to come out. He wouldn't have known this, but this was maybe her trying to branch out, be more independent. So after she got off work, Amber picked him up at his house, and then they headed to Seasons Inn. When Amber and Roy arrived, they don't necessarily spend every minute together. Michael McKinney was there, and Roy says that he spent most of the night with Michael and Michael's brother, Chris, and Chris is the one who owns Seasons. And they're just chatting. And Roy says that Amber was talking to people she knew, hanging out with her friends. Of course, they commingled at points. Michael even bought Amber and Roy a few drinks, and then Chris gave them a few rounds on the house. Now, the bar closes at 2 a.m., but when you know the owner, no, it doesn't. And he said that this big crowd stayed there drinking after hours. That was the norm for Seasons. But sometime around 4 a.m, Michael invited Amber and Roy to come back to his place to keep partying. This isn't a big group that's going back. Honestly, it was really just the people who lived at the house. So Michael, then his 23-year-old son, Michael McKinney III, or MK, as everyone calls him, a guy named Josh Mullins, who had a room in the basement in the house, and Josh's girlfriend, Lauren. So Roy says, they just accept the invitation. But Amber's cousin Debbie told us that Amber was probably so excited to get that invite. I mean, this may have been a big deal for her. She probably felt so lucky. And so she and these other 5 people all piled into Michael's Bronco to head to the McKinney house. Now, Roy says when they got to the house on Arkansas Creek Road, the party kept going in the basement where Michael had after parties often. I mean, he kept making everyone drinks. Everyone was having a good time. But at some point, Roy had reached his limit, and he knew that he had to go to bed. He'd been there before, so he knew right where to go, upstairs to MK's room where he could collapse on a bunk bed. And he said that when he walked up the basement stairs, everyone was still down there. Everyone seemed fine. The next thing he knew, Roy was waking up to daylight. Now it's between 7 and 9, maybe 9, 10, 11. He's real fuzzy on the details, but he was also in real rough shape. He was covered in his own urine and feces. Obviously felt really sick.
Feces?
Yeah, dude was drunk, and I think he had some medical issues. But he says that he just wanted to go home. So he makes his way out of the bedroom to go look for his phone so he can call someone to pick him up. And in his search, he stumbles down the hall to the other end of the house, it's by the kitchen. And from there, he could see the back of Amber's head. And it looked like she was sitting on the couch in the living room. And so he said he called her name as he was going around to the front of the couch. And as soon as he saw her from the front, he knew why she hadn't been responding, because she was covered in blood. And he says he rushes over to her, shakes her, is screaming her name twice, but she didn't respond at all. And in a panic, he rushes to Michael's bedroom on the same floor, starts banging on the door for him to wake up. And he says Michael opens it right away. And Roy just said, call 911 because something's happened to Amber. And he thought she'd had a stroke or something. And so according to Roy, Michael maybe stepped out from his room a bit, looked Amber's way, and then he steps back in and starts making calls. And Roy can't hear much. He's just sitting at the dining room table in shock. But at some point, he asked where MK was because he didn't want him seeing what was in the living room. And Michael told him that MK left sometime during the night, so no concern there. But Lauren and Josh weren't so lucky. At some point, they come upstairs where they all wait for police.
So they just sat there? Did no one check her pulse or try CPR? I know he's a dentist, but dentists are still doctors.
Police literally asked Roy the same question, and Roy explained that he works in the medical field, right? He thought Amber had some kind of hemorrhage or aneurysm because he didn't notice any wounds, he says. All he saw was the blood, which had dried already, and he figured that she was gone just from her face and her eyes.
I have so many questions. How did he mistake a slit throat for an aneurysm? That is not the same at all.
Actually, the way that she was slumped over, it hid her neck, and you actually couldn't tell. Even first responders say that you could not see her throat was slit. So that wasn't super weird to them.
Okay, fine, but if he's claiming the blood was dry and that he didn't really touch her beyond, shaking her that one time, how does that explain him being covered in blood?
Because he says it isn't her blood. He said that he'd fallen quite a few times the night before. He had something 10 to 14 drinks that night and said he was a 9 out of 10 on the drunk scale. I don't know what a 10 out of 10 is for Roy, but he was sloppy. So he said he wiped out once while getting out of the Bronco when they first got there. And then later at the house, he fell again in the bathroom and split open his chin. And the story probably seems a little wild and far-fetched.
Yeah.
Especially because, according to court records, one of the detectives tells Roy that they can't find any blood in the bathroom where he says he busted his chin. And Roy's surprised by this because he's I didn't clean up after myself, so I don't know what to make of this. But he insists that's what happened. He insists that everyone was fine when he staggered off to bed at 6:30. And Lauren, the only other person willing to talk to police that we know of, backs this up. She says that Amber was still alive in the living room when Josh and her went back down to the basement where Josh's room was to go to bed. And she says that was around 7 a.m.
Okay, what about the blood? Does she back up his story about why it was on him? Say anything about someone cleaning it up in the bathroom?
I don't know. So there haven't been a ton of details released about what exactly she told police. But there is something else that backs up Roy's story. Something way better than a drunk person's memory. Investigators realized pretty early on that there was another call made to 911 from Michael's house that morning, like 4.5 hours before the one about Amber. MK called. According to court filings, MK asked dispatchers to send someone to take a family friend to the drunk tank. The family friend that he's talking about is presumably Roy. And the dispatcher asked if Roy was fighting or otherwise committing an arrestable offense. And MK didn't answer directly, but he added, quote, "I'm not saying arrest him." Now, I have not heard this call, but Debbie got to listen to the call, and she said that MK describes Roy as, quote, really effed up, and said that he was bleeding profusely. But then Michael gets on the line and says that, I've got this under control, no response is needed, so no one is dispatched.
I'm sorry. I guess I
don't know what to think?
Yeah, because are we thinking something really happened at 6?
Not if you believe Roy and Lauren. Because Roy goes to bed after this. Everything's fine. Lauren goes to bed an hour after this call. Everything's still fine.
But did either of them mention the first 911 call in their stories?
I don't know about Lauren, but I know that police asked Roy when they found out about it, what's this 6 a.m. 911 call about? And it was total news to him that MK called 911 on him.
I mean, if he blacked out, I don't know if we can trust anything he says, though.
I don't think he's saying he doesn't know because he blacked out. He just didn't know that MK did that. And without hearing the call myself, I don't know if MK's in another room. I don't know, or if things were just getting hazy for Roy, or if he's lying. Roy actually agreed to a polygraph test, but he fails it pretty royally. I mean, he fails on 4 substantial questions. Did you see anyone stab or cut that woman? Did you stab or cut that woman? Did anyone tell you that they stabbed or cut that woman? Did you help cover up that woman's death?
Oh, so all the important questions.
Yeah, and after he fails, detectives want to bring him in for more questioning, but this is where Roy's attorney shuts it down. And as far as I know, that was Roy's last interview with police.
So are Michael, MK, and Josh taking polygraphs and giving their version of events? Oh, your face is telling me a lot.
It doesn't seem like it. So there's nothing in any of the court records coming from them. But of course, a lot of evidence won't come out until the trial. It actually even takes investigators a minute to find MK. I do know that because he wasn't at his mom's house either. He's not there when they show up, not at his mom's house. And it turns out that he had gone back to the city of Moorhead, which is 70 miles away where he went to college. But luckily for state police, the evidence that they have been collecting from the scene and Amber's autopsy, that all tells a story of its own. It's just not what anyone expected. Amber's autopsy reveals that her attack was brutal. At less than 5 feet tall, she clearly tried to fight off her killer because she had defensive wounds and they were able to collect biological material from under her fingernails that didn't belong to her. But any one of the men in the house that night could have overpowered her. They were all taller, stronger, and of course, whoever murdered her had a weapon. Now, we don't have the official autopsy, but what we do know from court records is that she was stabbed a total of 12 times in the face, neck, head, torso, and throat. And the killer used so much force that the blade of the knife broke off in her neck and was still there for the ME to find.
Oh my God.
And that was probably a huge shock to anyone in the room when it was found because they had collected a knife from the scene.
What?
A whole intact knife that had been shoved into the couch Amber was sitting on. And now they have this blade, but the missing handle that should have been attached to said blade in her neck was nowhere to be found. never recovered.
Wait, so were 2 weapons used?
It doesn't seem like it. Again, there's still very limited information about the knife recovered from the couch and what testing might have been done on it and what that might have shown.
Mhm.
But the way the indictments read, it looks like they think that knife was planted.
But why? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
I know. And I keep going over it in my head. And I don't know if it only doesn't make sense because we're sober right now, like trying to like piece this together.
Right.
Anyway, put the planted knife aside. The handle to the knife that we care about is missing. And you know what else is missing? The McKinneys had surveillance cameras around their house, and one of those cameras was pointed directly at the couch where Amber was found. According to Lauren, it was there. There was also one in the basement by the bar area. So this case should be over right there.
Yeah.
It should show exactly what happened and when and who was involved.
Mm-hmm.
But those cameras and the footage were gone by the time police arrived at the house after Michael's 911 call. And so was the digital video recorder and the hard drive that stored the footage from the surveillance cameras too. Whatever was on those tapes is long gone now. According to court records, surveillance footage from the area, though, they collect that, and it shows MK's blue truck leaving the area at around 8:30 in the morning. And that is very different from what Roy said that Michael told him, which was that MK left the night before.
I mean, we knew that was a lie as soon as we found out about the 6 a.m. call from MK to 911.
Right. And if everyone's stories are to be believed, big if there, the time that he's there at the house and then leaves is in this very critical window. So MK makes that 911 call a little before 6 a.m. Roy goes to bed, presumably, after that. Then Lauren and Josh go to bed at 7 a.m. And Lauren says Amber is still alive and well, and it's just Michael and MK who are now unaccounted for. Then, just before 8:30, MK's truck is driving away. And by 10:37, Amber is for sure dead. Blood on her has already had time to dry.
Yeah, I am so suspicious of everyone right now.
I know, which I think is going to be a problem when this case goes to trial. What they need is physical evidence tying someone to Amber's murder. It seems like the best piece of evidence they have to work with is that material found under her fingernails. I mean, she clearly tried to defend herself. So if it was from one of the 5 other people in the house that night, maybe their DNA is going to show up there. Now, they are able to create a profile from what they got. It's not great, but it is enough to tell that it's male. And they can do direct comparisons with it. So they get the DNA of every man that was in the house that night. I'm assuming through a warrant, but that's not specified in the court docs. So Roy, Michael, Josh, and MK. And something interesting happens when MK goes to the KSP post to give his sample. This is just 3 days after Amber's death. And I don't know if this is the first time they're actually laying eyes on him or what, but authorities notice that he has a bunch of scratches on both of his arms. And it looks like the scratches kind of like start at the inside of the elbow and like move down in the direction of his hand. And listen, I'm no expert, but like it kind of looks like claw marks.
What does MK say the scratches are from?
I don't know if he gives an explanation. Like if he does, that's not in the court records. My guess is that he's keeping his mouth shut based on advice from his attorney. But DNA is going to do the talking for him if it's his. They just have to send it off and then wait. Now, mind you, while all of this is unfolding in the first couple of days, Amber's family is still mostly in the dark. No one from law enforcement ever came to their house for an official notification of Amber's death, and no one came to them right away to get any statements or anything. But they weren't just waiting around. I mean, they start hearing rumors about what happened. They find out who Amber was with the night before and where she was. They feel like the McKinneys might have something to do with whatever happened to her.
Which I think is a fair assumption.
Right. And their biggest fear, though, is that, I mean, because the McKinneys are kind of what they consider powerful in the community, they're afraid that Amber's death might just get swept under the rug. Debbie told us that people feel that there are two kinds of justice in Floyd County, one for the haves and one for the have-nots. I mean, we end up finding out that Michael is actually friends with at least one officer in the Prestonsburg Police Department. So even though the case is being handled by a different agency, their faith in a proper investigation is shaky at best. So by day 2, her loved ones and people from the community were protesting outside of Michael McKinney's restaurant where Amber worked. Debbie created a Facebook page called Justice for Amber, and people were joining in droves. They went on to hold a candlelight vigil at the alternative school that Amber attended. And her family talks to every reporter who calls. They want answers, and they think the best way to get them is through attention. So tension is building in the community. And keep in mind, when I say community, Prestonsburg is literally a few streets tucked into a valley, a few stores on the highway, a few side streets, mostly these little houses. I mean, the whole population is around 3,500 people. So it does not take long for rumors to start spreading. And the rumor that's spreading isn't just that someone in that house was involved in her murder. People in town believe that police tried to cover it up.
The Kentucky State Police?
No, though, I mean, the family still does not love how they found out Amber was murdered secondhand.
Right.
But there was something about the call that they got from Debbie's friend, that retired KSP officer, that just never quite sat right with them.
And that's the one where the chief of police in Prestonsburg told them to settle down.
And that Amber wasn't murdered.
Right.
Just she aspirated. Because that's specific. And how would he know?
It's specifically so different from the truth of what happened, too.
Right. So if he was in the know, that shouldn't have been his answer.
Right.
If he didn't know anything,
why is he saying that?
Why is he literally making stuff up to tell a grieving family on a case that he's not working? It's not adding up. But there's something else that's not adding up when it comes to who knew what and when. So remember Michael's 911 call? When he said, dude, it looks like somebody's come into the house and murdered her. Her throat slit. There's blood everywhere. How would he have known that? Roy didn't know that her throat was slit. He told Michael that she had an aneurysm or something. And remember, even first responders said that it wasn't clear that her throat was slit because of how she was slumped over.
Yeah.
Right. But Michael wasn't even close up. Roy said at most, Michael just stepped out of his room and looked over,
peeked over
toward the couch before going back into his room and making calls. And Roy told police that he never saw Michael check on Amber.
I mean, he seems pretty sure about what happened on the call, though.
Yes, he does seem pretty sure of it when he calls 911. But you might have caught me saying that he made calls that morning, plural.
Not just a call to 911.
And the first one that morning wasn't to 911. You're not going to believe who it was to when I show you the court docs. Police found out that before calling 911, Michael McKinney made a nearly 8-minute call to Randy Woods, the Prestonsburg chief of police.
Which, for what possible reason?
So Michael doesn't give one to investigators that we know of, but Chief Woods does. Chief Woods tells state investigators that when Michael called, he just instructed him to call 911.
Call 911. Did that take 8 minutes?
Right. They have an 8-minute call.
Yeah.
Now, maybe Michael was in shock. I mean, no one ever expects to be in a situation like this. Maybe he panicked. He called law enforcement by dialing his friend's number who's in law enforcement instead of 911. In his mind, it could have been the same thing. And maybe for 8 minutes, Chief Woods was calming him down. We don't know. But it would sure be weird if he spent that long calming his friend down, but then basically told the family to cool it because she aspirated. While then Michael goes on to tell 911 that her throat was slit.
And Roy didn't overhear anything.
He says no. He says that he knew he was making more than one call, but he suspected that Michael was calling his ex-wife first. I don't know why, but he says he didn't know it was the chief and he couldn't hear much from the call.
Could Chief Woods have been instructing Michael about what to do?
Only 2 people know what was said in those 8 minutes. We reached out to Chief Woods, but we have not heard back yet. What I will say is I think there's something interesting to remember. Floyd County had just changed its 911 call system, remember, a few months before Amber's murder. It is possible that when Michael called 911, he expected Prestonsburg Dispatch to send Prestonsburg officers.
Would it have made a difference?
I don't know. One of the things I think about, and I might have mentioned this before, but I recently went to a coroner's conference this year, and the educator there was warning against something that he sees a lot, where responding officers or a coroner with no death investigation training, because by the way, in some places, to this day, you don't need any training to be a coroner, just got to be a high school graduate with a pulse. I'm not saying that's the case here, but anyways, someone with no investigative training can show up in some places to a scene. And if that person says it's not suspicious, that's the end of the line. No criminal investigators come out. It is just over and done with.
But Michael said on the call with 911 that her throat was slit.
I know that doesn't make sense to say if something sketchy was going on. So I'm not saying that in this case. I would pay good money to see first responders' reports. Who was dispatched? Who showed up? When? Why? But none of that has been released yet by the state police. Because Amber's family has some suspicions about the way that they think things went down and what was supposed to happen, but without documentation, I can't report on it. Not yet, at least. I can tell you that if someone was trying to cover this up, Debbie's family believes it wouldn't be the first cover-up to happen in Floyd County, not even the first for their family. Remember how I told you that Amber grew up with her grandparents because both of her parents died?
Yeah.
Well, her mother, Sharon, died in 1988 after she got locked in a Prestonsburg bar called the Wildcat Lounge and climbed up on a chair to break out a window. The story is that the chair collapsed and it left her stuck hanging from the window with her feet a few inches off the floor. So she suffocated, and it was just considered an accident. The family feels that there wasn't much of an investigation at all. But Debbie says the family never bought that explanation. I mean, the bar owners swore that they had checked the place before closing that night and nobody was inside. And there's other cases that Debbie mentioned, like Kristen Smith, who was 33. She was found dead in her home by her boyfriend on June 2nd, 2021 in Martin, the same tiny city of around 500 where the McKinneys live. And not just any boyfriend. A friend we spoke to who did not want to be named says that she was dating a local official. She was a mom of 2 kids and about to graduate from college. She'd worked really hard to complete a diploma that would mean that she could give her kids the kind of life that she wanted them to have without having to rely on anyone else. The same friend told us that after numerous instances of domestic violence, Kristen was leaving. And the next morning, she was found dead under what her family thinks are suspicious circumstances. According to WSAZ, her death was ruled a suicide. Her friend also told us that people in Floyd County just see this as kind of the way things happen in those parts. The same day Kristen was last seen alive, a woman named Candy Green Gonzalez, who was 36, was reported missing from Prestonsburg. Her family had last seen her the day before. Rumors online that we can't confirm say that Candy was dating the son of a local law enforcement officer. Now, one of Candy's relatives did tell us it's disturbing how much happens in Floyd County that just seems to get swept under the rug and is never talked about again. Women missing, women suspiciously dying, and no one convicted, especially if they have pull at the courthouse. People close to both women say that their cases weren't really investigated, and they believe that the politicians and law enforcement in the county close ranks to protect their own. And there was almost no media coverage on these cases to expose any issues. And that is what makes Amber's case different.
And her case is so clearly homicide. There's no way to even try to call it something else.
You mean like aspiration?
Right.
Yeah, but still, even with everything they have, at that time, months go by while KSP waits for the forensic testing they did to come back because the lab is backlogged. And in that time, no one is arrested.
Which, how?
But who? Like, you have 6 people in the house that night. I mean, one's dead. One is covered in blood and failed a polygraph. The one with scratches on his arm left the house during like a very critical window of time when the murder is thought to have happened. One talked to police but said that she was asleep and everything was fine. And 2 others don't seem to be talking to police at all, unless you count an off-the-books call to the chief of police before 911 was called. So who do you arrest? Like, it can't be all of them, not without proof. The community is outraged by this, though, understandably. And at some point, members even rented a billboard that says "Justice for Amber," and they paid $3,000 every 3 months to keep it up. But finally, according to Debbie, 8 months later...
8 months?
8 months later, the results finally start coming in. The blood on Roy's shirt is Roy's blood. No trace of Amber's. And that DNA under her nails, not Roy's. And not Josh's.
Okay.
Now, the type of testing they were working with YSTR testing, which looks at genetic markers on the Y chromosome. And those get passed down from father to son. So all males along a direct paternal line have the same marker. So good news in this case, they have a match. It's McKinney DNA. Bad news, investigators can't say which one. It could be Michael, or it could be MK, or it could be any other male in that familial line for that matter.
Yeah, but there wasn't any other family in the house that night.
Very true. So with investigators knowing that they were the only 2 men from that family in the house, and knowing that MK is the one who wasn't there when police showed up, and that he's the one who had scratches on his arms when they met with him 3 days after the murder, MK is the one who is finally charged with Amber's murder.
The one, so just him.
Yeah, they charge MK with murder and what will eventually be 8 counts of evidence tampering. But Michael and Josh get hit with evidence tampering charges too, and they all plead not guilty.
And Roy and Lauren?
Nada, which was a little surprising to me. Not necessarily the Roy part, based on just how he cooperated and what we know from all the pieces. I mean, he said 9 out of 10 drunk. I think he was a full 10 out of 10 drunk and asleep when whatever happened. But I am having a hard time figuring out where Lauren is for all of this, or why she's not a part of it, but Josh is.
Yeah.
If they both went to bed together, like she said.
Yeah.
But the idea put forward in the indictment is that MK killed Amber, and then with Michael and Josh, quote, removed, concealed, or destroyed, end quote, the handle on the knife used in the attack, MK's clothing, and the camera and digital recorder containing surveillance footage, the hard drive that would have contained footage of the murder, all of that. The indictment also alleges that Amber's blood was cleaned up from the kitchen and the laundry room sinks.
And this is all before Michael ever makes any calls, while Roy is still sleeping.
Presumably. Now, one thing I know I mentioned is that Roy said that Michael opened his bedroom door right away when he starts pounding on it. It seems to me like Michael was already up, or maybe had never gone to bed.
So did Roy interrupt a plan, or was Michael waiting for someone else to find Amber?
I have no clue. I don't even think we can say for certain that Michael wasn't sleeping. But I think if evidence was destroyed like the prosecution is alleging, it probably happened before Roy woke up. And listen, there is still a lot we don't know. I mean, I get the feeling what has been released is only scratching the surface of what police have.
I mean, yeah, motive. How did this night spiral so, badly and quickly, and all of it?
That is the thing with this case. This is the big question still, but I'm not sure we're ever going to get a satisfying answer. I mean, so often when it comes to violence against women, you see a sexual motive. But Amber was clothed from what we know, and there was no sign of sexual assault that was in the records. And the prosecution hasn't suggested that that's their theory either. The only thing that has been talked about is some worrisome behavior by MK that got uncovered in KSP's investigation. According to court docs, MK allegedly has a history of violent outbursts and mental instability. Now, he doesn't have a criminal history, but what investigators hear paints a really disturbing picture. According to court records, a guy named Timothy Likens told investigators that he had gone to the McKinney house one night after drinking at Seasons, the usual, and he alleges MK pulled out a knife and said that he was going to kill everyone there. And 20 people were over, so everyone fled the basement, according to Timothy. And then Michael wrestled the knife away from MK. And Roy even told investigators that he was talking to MK the night of the murder, and MK was confiding in him that he was experiencing suicidal thoughts and that he'd been hearing dark voices telling him to do bad things. Now, Roy says that he was really concerned and he tried to comfort him, but given how much he drank, Roy was in no shape to help anyone.
Right.
But interestingly, MK's defense is not combating these charges with any kind of insanity defense.
Which, I feel like that would be a struggle to pull off given that 6 a.m. call he made. You're lucid enough to call 911
Right.
about Roy, worried about his state.
Right. So if he wasn't experiencing an episode of psychosis, and he did murder Amber like police allege and the prosecution alleges, then what was that call? Was this premeditated? Was he trying to frame Roy with that call? It might be totally unrelated, but pointing the finger at Roy does seem to be the strategy for MK's defense. We actually got MK's defense attorney, Stephen Romines, on the phone. It's one of the first times he's spoken publicly about the case. And one of the first things he pointed to for us was that first 911 call from MK about Roy being drunk and belligerent. He also pointed to police testimony to the grand jury that indicated Amber was upset at Roy for being so drunk and embarrassed by his behavior in front of her boss.
So what, he killed her?
MK's lawyer didn't say that. He's just pointing to things that he thinks we should know. And stuff I assume he's going to be sharing with a jury.
Wait, what about MK's dad lying about when MK left? He's the only one who left that morning.
Well, we get that from Roy. Roy is the one telling police that Michael said that.
Mm-hmm.
And MK's lawyer says that anything that comes out of Roy's mouth is worthless in his mind. He told us that Roy's cell phone was right beside Amber's body on the couch. Remember, he'd gone looking for it that morning, and that's when he found Amber. And MK's attorney also points to the fact that Roy failed his polygraph test on, remember, those pretty substantial questions.
And I'd also like to point out that Roy's the only one who actually took a polygraph.
That we know of, correct. Okay. Crime Junkie life rule number 4, never take a polygraph. Yeah. But of course, those results aren't going to be admissible in court.
Right.
MK's attorney says that investigators basically ruled Roy out because they thought that Roy was too drunk to kill someone, which he disagrees with. Oh, and the missing surveillance and camera equipment.
Yes.
We asked him about that, and he says that he'll address that at trial. But he says that it had been removed weeks earlier because it was going to get replaced. As for why MK didn't cooperate with investigators, MK's lawyer says investigators implicated him immediately, and so he wisely exercised his Fifth Amendment rights.
And what about the DNA? The DNA does not look good for his client.
He said it's the weakest DNA evidence he's ever seen in connection to a case, and that it could have come from anything like laying on a couch in someone's home. And listen, I don't have details about this DNA, but I do assume there was very little if all they could do was YSTR, right? If there would have been more, they could have gotten a sample to do a direct comparison with both of the McKinneys, which I think would have helped their case against MK, right? If it ended up being his. So I think that's going to be a point that MK's lawyer may be able to win with a jury. But guess who else we heard from? Right before we got ready to do this recording, Michael McKinney, MK's dad, got back to us. And he had some interesting things to say. He accused Amber's family and supporters of using a, quote, paid social media campaign, end quote, to attack him and his family, which he said is an attempt for conviction in the court of public opinion. And he also said that the campaign made it so that Roy wasn't investigated, even though that Michael says the evidence against Roy is overwhelming. And he points to some of the same factors as MK's lawyer did, like the failed polygraph, the fact that Roy eventually did stop talking to investigators. Michael says the campaign against his family is trying to, quote, contaminate the jury pool. And he also accused the prosecution of trying to delay the trial so that there is more time to influence prospective jurors. Now, the trial was set for December, but on October 20th, the prosecution did ask for more time. They wanted to continue to test more evidence.
What evidence is there left to be tested?
Apparently, there are at least 33 more items that need to be analyzed for DNA. Remember, the crime lab in Kentucky is seriously backed up. It took 8 months for that first batch of results to come back, so the lab just didn't get it done in time. Now, the judge granted that request, canceling the December 1st trial date, and basically they ordered everyone to come back in that day for a pretrial conference instead. And so I assume that they'll have a new trial date after that. And we're actually going to be live streaming the whole thing on the Crime Junkie Jury YouTube channel, so please show up for Amber and her family. Come, drop a comment, let them know that you are there, that you're supporting them. I know it would mean so much to them. And until then, MK is in jail awaiting trial. Josh and Michael are both out on bail and house arrest with conditions. They can kind of go about their business. Michael was still allowed to train other dentists while awaiting trial to save his dental practice. And he's still allowed to go to his restaurant.
And what about the Chief Woods of it all? If it were me, I would want to dig deeper into figuring out whether there was any kind of attempted cover-up here.
This is the other interesting part. So Chief Woods ended up resigning from the Prestonsburg Police Department 5 days after Amber's murder. Now, in a statement quoted in local media at the time, he said that his resignation was because of the emotional toll of a June 2022 shooting in Floyd County that killed 3 police officers.
Ashley.
The resignation was right before the anniversary of the shooting, so that is his official reason.
Got it.
Anyway, in June 2024, Amber's family brought a civil suit against multiple public officials and private individuals, including Chief Randy Woods, also the Prestonsburg Police Department, the McKinneys, Roy, and others, all alleging negligence, obstruction of justice, civil conspiracy, and other wrongdoings. And this was before they ever knew if there was going to be criminal charges, so that case is still pending. A major part of the suit is what we mentioned about the 911 system transfer in Floyd County from the KSP to the city.
Mm-hmm.
And the lawsuit claims that that switch left the county without adequate emergency coverage. And they say that contributed to Amber's murder because if someone had gone to the McKinney's house when MK first called 911 on Roy, she might still be alive. It has been beyond hard for Amber's family to watch the men accused of being involved in her death go about their day-to-day lives over the last couple of years. It's their hope that when they have their day in court, that they're going to see justice for Amber. Because at the end of the day, they want to ensure that Amber herself never gets lost in this story. She endured so many tragedies, and she was just finding her footing. And for things to end like this for her, this doesn't seem fair. And they don't want her death to be for nothing. So they're pushing for a bill to be reintroduced in the Kentucky State Legislature that would increase funding for crime labs so that investigators and families don't have to go through long waits that they had to in Amber's case. It would be called Amber's Law. And they're getting a lot of support from the community where they live and across the nation. Debbie tells us that she thinks it's because so many people in that area identify with Amber, with her struggles and her losses. And as information came out after she was murdered and people caught wind of an alleged cover-up, it really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So Debbie hopes Amber's case brings attention to the other loved ones of other missing people or people who may have died suspiciously in the county. And she actually took to the Facebook group that she created for Amber, and she put this call out on it asking other people if they knew of cases that needed attention, because she wants Amber's story to give other people some hope and some fight that, if they can get out there and stand up and stick with it, maybe there will be some change or some justice for them too. And people have been commenting with names, so many names. It is totally overwhelming, and we're having the team look into some of those cases now. So we're going to keep you updated as we dig into those. And Debbie wrote in that same Facebook post that she had been hoping and praying that Amber would help bring attention and justice to others who needed it. You can find all the source material for this episode on our website, crimejunkie.com. And if you want to listen to more episodes like this one and all of our episodes ad-free, be sure to join our fan club. You'll also get early access to episodes and tons of bonus episodes.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Crime Junkie Podcast.
We'll be back next week with another episode.
What I'm about to brief you on is something deeply troubling to me as a human being and as a police chief. On February 4th, 2021, 23-year-old Sandra Birchmore was found deceased in her apartment in Canton. What I am here to talk about today is her life and how she was failed by, manipulated by, and used by people of authority that she admired and trusted right up into her final days. Miss Birchmore was a vulnerable person who had one constant in her life since childhood: her unwavering admiration of police officers, of those serving the military, people in uniform, people with oaths and duties to protect and serve. The admiration led her to form relationships with men who were willing to take advantage of her. I stand before you today as a civil servant who is heartbroken and incensed by what has transpired, and who pledges to that this chapter in the Stoughton Police Department and the town of Stoughton is over. It must never repeat. The revolving door is closed.
There are so many stories we tell that involve corruption, cover-ups, or just downright incompetence or negligence that it makes me lose complete faith in the system. A system that is put in place to protect us. And doing this show for as long as I have, I've seen a lot more bad than good. The problems are systemic. And at times, I've even caught myself thinking, like, what is the point? Like, we might as well just give up because the problems are so big and have been there for so long that maybe I'm the delusional one. And this is just how the world is, evil. And the evil is so, deeply rooted that we are never going to win or never going to make a difference. But then, when I need it the most, I get a glimpse of the good ones. The people who are fighting from the inside to make things better and fair and just. People who believe in right and wrong and know that no one is above the law. And those people give me hope all over again to keep fighting myself. And I felt all of those feelings when covering today's story. Despair that an entire agency could look the other way when so much evidence was at their fingertips suggesting a boy in blue might have killed a young woman to protect his reputation. And then this fire to kick ass and take names and get behind those people, like Donna McNamara, the chief of the Stoughton PD who you just heard at the top. She didn't just sit back and let it be. She found her own way to expose the truth, and she lit a spark that other good people out there doing the right thing fanned into a flame to get justice for Sandra Birchmore. So let me tell you how that happened. February 4th, 2021, 23-year-old Sandra Birchmore was found dead in her Canton, Massachusetts apartment. Police discovered her body while responding to a welfare check requested by someone at the school where she worked because she hadn't shown up in days. Now, Sandra was found in a seated position on the floor by her bedroom closet with this duffel bag strap wrapped tightly around her neck and fixed to the handle of the closet door. The Massachusetts State Police didn't note any signs of forced entry to her apartment. The door was actually locked, and they had to get a key from the property manager just to get in. And once they were inside, they didn't see any signs of a struggle at all in the bedroom or anywhere else in the apartment. The walls didn't have any indentations or scuff marks, and there were no drag marks on the floor or anything like that, even though the apartment was cluttered with baby items still in boxes for the child that Sandra was 8 to 10 weeks pregnant with. Nothing seemed to be knocked over or moved. And surveillance footage from her apartment complex's lobby shows Sandra coming and going alone on Monday, February 1st, which is the last day she appears on camera and the day that officials believe she died. So the suicide determination came quickly. Even before the medical examiner's official ruling, all the Canton PD reports discussed this case as a suicide. And the Massachusetts State Police seemed to agree. Because I'm sure the more they learned about Sandra, it just began to confirm their theory. Because she grew up struggling. Dad wasn't in the picture. Mom had chronic health challenges, oftentimes not being able to work, so they struggled to make ends meet. And from a young age, Sandra sort of took on the role of caretaker. And then in 2016, when Sandra was just 19 years old, her mom died of a stroke. And then just weeks later, her grandmother passed away too. According to an unnamed source in a Boston Globe article, after these back-to-back tragedies, Sandra began expressing suicidal thoughts in her journal entries. And she tried living with other family members after this, but she never really had that stable home base. And there was an instance, 8 or 9 months before her death, where Sandra got in a fight with the family member that she was living with and stormed out. That person called 911, concerned that Sandra might be at risk of hurting herself. Now, at the time of her death, she was about 2.5 months pregnant with what investigators would quickly find out was a married man's baby. So it must have all just been too much. How sad. And when a pathologist from the office of the chief medical examiner agrees and rules this case as suicide, that's that. And there is a world where it would have ended right there. But not this one. Not this time. You see, even though Canton PD was the agency originally called and Massachusetts State Police eventually took over, the Stoughton Police Department opened an internal affairs investigation the day after Sandra was found.
And where in relation to all this is Stoughton?
It's just a town over from Canton.
Okay.
But the reason they're in the mix is because of who Sandra's baby daddy allegedly was. You see, Chief Donna McNamara heard from the Massachusetts State Police that one of her officers, a man named Matthew Farwell, may have been having an affair with Sandra. And that would have violated department policies. Because, put him married with kids aside, Matthew Farwell was an officer who worked with their police explorers program. And Sandra, in her youth, was an explorer. And Bert, I know you know all about the program because it came up in our live show, but for the newbies out there, do you want to give them the lowdown?
Yeah, this will be very surface level, but the Explorers program is basically like an extracurricular program run by local law enforcement agencies, and it's open to anyone from the ages of 6th grade to 20 years old.
Yeah.
Who are interested in joining law enforcement one day. It's sort of like a junior police academy. They wear little uniforms, learn about investigations, do ride-alongs, even apparently search for evidence sometimes. Yeah. Usually the program is led by actual officers from the local department. So the kids who sign up get really close to them, which can be a really great thing in some cases, but potentially really dangerous in others.
You are correct.
Okay, so I was about to ask if the state police knew about this, but if they're the ones who told the chief in Stoughton, then they had to have.
Yeah, they did. And they were looking into it too. Despite many files that refer to Sandra's death as a suicide, it does seem like they were still doing some legwork, like checking boxes, making sure they didn't miss anything big, like the affair with a married officer.
Right.
They even talked to him, collected his and Sandra's phone data. And in their interview with him, which takes place on February 6th in a school parking lot for some reason, Matthew admits that he was at Sandra's apartment that night.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, so remember the surveillance video that showed her apartment lobby, right? She's coming and going.
She's coming and going by herself.
Well, it didn't just show her coming and going. And just a quick FYI, the footage was found to be 13 minutes off, so the times I'm going to be telling you have been adjusted for accuracy. But basically, Sandra gets home early from school because they had closed for a snow day on the 1st. A few hours later, after 5 p.m., she's caught on camera again picking up a food delivery. And then at 5:31 p.m., she's seen one last time stepping outside briefly to brush the snow off her car and then heading back upstairs. And that's it for Sandra. But they did look at the rest of the footage to see if there was anyone else suspicious on it. And the maintenance supervisor at the apartment building tells officers that he recognizes everybody who enters the lobby that night except for one person. This tall, burly man wearing boots, jeans, a black jacket with a hood up, and what looks like a COVID mask, which almost entirely covers his face. Now, he entered the building at 9:14 p.m. and then left at 9:43. And the police report notes that the man wasn't wearing gloves and appeared to be white.
And that's Matthew.
I mean, we know now that it was Matthew because he is admitting it to police on the 6th. But at the time, it's a little hard to tell what they knew because this part of the police report is pretty heavily redacted. All I know is that one of the building workers says that they had seen this guy with Sandra before, but they didn't know who he was. And the leasing manager starts giving them at that point some information about a police officer that Sandra had been in a relationship with and how there was something that he was unhappy about that Sandra was nervous about. But honestly, it truly is almost impossible to make sense of this person's account with all of the redactions to the file.
Right, you're kind of just like barely able to kind of almost connect dots.
Right. So they were probably suspicious, but now they no, it was him, right? And his story seems to again confirm their original hypothesis because he says that he met Sandra in the Explorer program. She was 13 when she joined. He was 24, but he says that nothing untoward happened. Matthew says that he knew Sandra had a troubled life and he felt bad for her, so he would keep tabs on her over the years. But according to him, the relationship didn't become sexual until early 2020 when Sandra would have been 21. And that only happened because he says he got drunk one night and, quote, ended up meeting up with her and having sex. And then he says that they had sex 2 or 3 more times after that, with the last time being in October of 2020.
So does he say that they were, dating? How did he classify the relationship? Were they together?
Well, so like I said, so he's married with 2 kids at that time. So at least on his end, this was very much not a public, relationship situation. But he goes on to say that in December of 2020, Sandra told him that she was pregnant and that he was the father. Now, in his interview, Matthew says that that wasn't possible and that the timeline didn't make any sense and just basically adamantly denies that he was the father of Sandra's unborn child.
Okay, so then cut to the chase, Matthew. Why are you at her apartment the day she died?
Yeah, so he says that night he asked Sandra if he could come over because he wanted to end things with her once and for all. He says that he hadn't seen her in about a week because he'd been trying to distance himself. But that was before he learned that Sandra was now telling people that he was the father of her child. So he went over that night and said that he told Sandra, quote, she was crazy and that there was no way he could be the father of her baby based on her timeline and that he was just done with her. He said that the two of them kind of got into this pretty nasty argument, not anything like yelling or physical, but just really tense. And before he left, he told her it was really over and he was blocking her on everything, which he did. And Matthew says Sandra was definitely upset, but that she didn't say anything about wanting to hurt herself. And he told police that she was very much alive and standing in the kitchen when he walked out. Now, they asked him to take a polygraph and submit to a DNA test, presumably to verify his claim about the baby not being his. But none of those things end up happening because Matthew gets an attorney who steps in. And this attorney, Patrick Hanley, actually writes a letter to an MSP sergeant saying that these requests don't make any sense for the investigation of a witness, which is what MSP had said Matthew was. I actually have a quote from Patrick. It says, I advise my client to decline these requests and the request for further interview that accompanied them. I did so because they are far outside the norm for mere witnesses in an investigation. I was a prosecutor for 14 years and participated in hundreds of interviews with state police detectives like yourself. I cannot recall one seeking a polygraph interview. And I can only recall seeking DNA of persons that the investigators and I considered targets. Mr. Farwell has already provided highly personal information. In my opinion, providing DNA is a step too far. End quote. The lawyer also underscores that Matthew had nothing to do with Sandra's death. that he never encouraged her to harm herself or believed that she might. And according to him, Sandra's death by suicide was a complete shock to Matthew. The thing Matthew does comply with is turning over his phone, but he warns that he deleted all the communications with Sandra.
Okay, that's fishy, right? Like, they see that that's at least sus, right?
They don't say. We just have a report that is very black and white, and I even brought this one. So it just says, on February 9th, 2021, Matthew Farwell consented to a data extraction of his personal iPhone 11, which was then extracted by Trooper Nick Garino. On April 26, 2021, I received Matthew's work cell phone from Stoughton Police Department. Through Matthew's attorney, consent was given for a data extraction, which was performed by Trooper Nick Garino. I analyzed both of these phones and did not find any communication with Sandra Birchmore. Matt had said in a previous interview that he had deleted all communications with Sandra. So there's no like, oh, we think this was weird
Just
or
like,
not.
Well, didn't see anything.
Right. So Trooper Nick Garino went through this, we know this, but another state police sergeant had started combing through Sandra's laptop that was collected from her apartment.
The other end of the communication.
Right. And so he finds in that thousands of text messages between Sandra and Matthew in the 12 months or so before her death. Now, the state police write that the text messages make it clear that Matthew and Sandra were in a sexual relationship, but they concluded that there was nothing threatening at all. So they must just be assuming that he deleted the messages to hide the affair. Nothing murdery here. So case closed, right? Wrong. Because Stoughton PD was running their internal affairs investigation alongside this one. And in reviewing over 32,000 messages between Sandra and Matthew in the 14 months leading up to her death, they see a far more disturbing picture of Sandra's case. Some cases fade from headlines. Some never made it there to begin with. I'm Ashley Flowers, and on my podcast, The Deck, I tell you the stories of cold cases featured on playing cards distributed in prisons, designed to spark new leads and bring long overdue justice. Because these stories deserve to be heard, and the loved ones of these victims still deserve answers. Are you ready to be dealt in? Listen to The Deck now, wherever you get your podcasts. So the chief of Stoughton PD, Donna McNamara, opened that internal affairs investigation into Matthew Farwell the day after Sandra was found because she had heard from MSP about Matthew potentially having an illicit affair with Sandra, violating department policies. So she put Matthew on paid leave starting February 24th. And again, just to be 100% clear, her internal investigation was only meant to look into Matthew's misconduct, not Sandra's death.
Right.
Chief McNamara and MSP had an understanding that MSP basically still maintained the jurisdiction over any criminal activity, even like anything that comes up in the internal investigation. Okay. And if the chief found any criminal culpability, she would basically pass all of that off to MSP. So like, sure, fine, whatever. That's the deal.
She's not looking for it, but if she sees it, she'll hand it over.
Yeah, I'm not going to take it. So her team starts looking at the phone data and the laptop that was previously analyzed by State Police Trooper Nick Garino. And these messages, which appear in federal and court documents, don't only suggest that Sandra and Matthew's sexual relationship began way before he originally said, but also that Matthew had disturbing sexual fantasies involving violence against women, choking, incest, pedophilia, necrophilia, and rape. And I want everyone to hear some of these messages so you guys can get an idea of the tone of the communication between Sandra and Matthew. So I'm going to have a voice actor reading them because they are really disturbing. So like fair warning to everyone listening. And also I don't want to look you in the eyes while I say, feel him inside me. But I think this shows the full extent of Matthew's behavior. So in a couple of exchanges, Matthew and Sandra talk about the beginning of their sexual relationship.
What was the first day you said, OMG, I want this guy to be my first. I want to feel him inside me?
Yeah, so 2012, I finally decided that I was going to try and find a way to f*** you, and just wasn't sure how. I had butterflies so bad the day you took my virginity.
Me too. It was such a big day.
It was April 10th, 2013. Best day of my life.
Me too.
So the sexual relationship actually began 7 years before Matthew told police that it began.
Yes, and he actually even says that he wishes they'd done it sooner.
I wish it had been a year sooner after helping you study at the library.
I didn't even make you wait a year after that.
I absolutely would have f***ed you in 12.
In 12?
2012.
And in 2012, Sandra would have been like, what?
She was like 14 or 15. And he knows that this would have been bad for anyone else to find out, so he asks her to get rid of their messages.
Clear that part out, baby.
I did.
Good girl.
Again, I know how disturbing these are, but I really think it's important for our listeners to understand the power that Matthew knew he had over Sandra, mentally and physically, by the way, because Sandra was 4'10", Matthew was 6'4". So in one exchange, he says,
LOL, if I pushed, I absolutely could have f***ed you without condoms from day one.
I was kind of scared to say no in the beginning, not knowing how you'd take it. So, yeah, you would have got no condoms.
Other messages from Matthew reveal even more disturbing desires.
Maybe I'll choke you a little. I'll grab your throat and say you won't say a word to anyone. Will you say, Matt, stop, I'm 13, I'm not ready for this. OMFG, please stop.
According to sources cited in the Boston Globe, in the year leading up to her death, there are at least 20 times that Matthew texted Sandra about grabbing her throat, squeezing her throat, or choking her during sex. In another exchange, Sandra asked,
Do you want me to just take what you do or try and say no? I know being told no is your favorite.
Say no.
Now, of course, all of these messages are from 2019 onward. So we have no way of knowing what Sandra and Matthew's communication was like before that. But in December of 2020, things took a notable turn. That's when Sandra texted Matthew about her pregnancy. That's when she sent him a photo of a colorful poster that she'd made with the word, "Congrats, we're going to be parents." And this is how he responded.
I literally have nothing to say right now. How could you express that in text when I said I don't appreciate it?
I'm mad you're acting how you are over a choice we both made.
I'm mad you act like you gave anyone a choice. You are truly the worst person on the face of the earth.
Matthew also asked how far along Sandra was.
Regardless of how far, we're keeping it. But 3.5 weeks, which means I conceived this month.
Okay, well, we need to talk then.
No that's obvious.
And on December 29th, 2020, they did talk. This conversation was in person, so we have no way of knowing exactly how it went. But afterward, Sandra texted Matthew this.
It made me really uncomfortable and stressed out and scared when you were next to me because I thought you were going to hit me after you said what you said and took things out of my hand. That's why I was crying. I know you wouldn't, but it still scared me.
So clearly he's not happy about the pregnancy.
I mean, yeah, it's a lot harder to hide from your wife than just an affair.
Well, and at an especially bad time, because I didn't mention this yet, but when Matthew left Sandra's apartment that night, February 1st, guess where he went? The delivery room, because his wife was in labor with their third baby. So yeah, he's about to have a new baby with his wife, and Sandra is telling him she's pregnant too. Now, maybe he would have found some way to keep this under wraps, but on January 20th, Matthew found out that Sandra had been telling people about their affair. Apparently, he had been under the impression that it was like their little secret, but it was far from it in Sandra's circles. And apparently, leading up to her death, this friend, who we're going to call Jill, tried to use that to her advantage. Jill said that her and Sandra got into an argument about some money that Sandra owed her. And Jill told Sandra that if she didn't start to pay up, she was going to go file a police report, which she did on January 20th, just weeks before Sandra's death. When Stoughton PD told Jill that this was a civil matter, Jill got upset. And in her anger, she, over the phone, basically said, well, like, you can tell whatever police officer or detective that Sandra's in a sexual relationship with, that he can tell her to pay back the money.
And how did the officer on the phone respond to that?
They went straight to Matthew and they're like, what's this about? And according to investigative files, Matthew got really rattled and told that person, quote, not to speak about this to anyone and to never talk about it again, end quote. And whoever he told that to must have kept their code of silence, since we know the internal affairs investigation did not start then.
Right.
But that day, after Matthew was approached about the affair, he texted Sandra.
Dude, your f***ing friend called my job, Sandra. WTF. You also told me that no one knew about us, yet she claimed we are f***ing.
It's literally nothing.
It's not nothing. She called my job. That's insane. Like you have no idea how bad what she did is. I literally can't believe this is even real life. Like, what else do I have to worry about now? Which other friend will do something tomorrow?
And what's so weird is after this interaction, Matthew just out of nowhere completely changes his tune and starts to speak really positively to Sandra about their whole situation. And Sandra actually texted her friend about it.
So the father came by last night. It was like a complete 360 change.
180?
Yeah, LOL.
Good or bad?
Good, but unexpected. So it kind of threw me off and made me a little uncomfortable, but that's because of how things were going. But it was like a complete 180 from where we were at.
On this same night, along with having a heart-to-heart, Matthew also asked Sandra for a key to her apartment and the code to her building's entrance. But even with him seemingly doing everything right, like saying the perfect things, there were moments where Sandra felt uneasy, like something wasn't quite right. The day of that 180-degree change conversation on January 24th, Sandra texted a friend about something weird.
Last night, he opened my closet door for something, and then he went in my bathroom looking at my bathroom. And then I have a dolly in my living room that he asked why I had it. It was just really odd. He started looking around. I don't know. It was really weird.
Then on January 29th, Sandra reminded Matthew what the code to enter her apartment complex was, and Matthew asked her to confirm that it was a general code for the entire building, not just like a personal code for Sandra. And that basically brings us to February 1st.
The day that Sandra died.
Yes. Matthew texted Sandra at around 9 p.m. asking if he could come by for a second. She responded that she would leave her door open for him. And that was the last known message that Sandra would ever send.
I guess I'm confused right now. Like, MSP had these messages from Sandra's laptop, right? Like, are they just ignoring them?
Ugh. It's really bizarre. So listen, hang on. I'm just going to read you exactly what they say about the laptop messages in the report. Keep in mind, again, a lot of redactions here. But it says this. Over the next several weeks, I analyzed data from Sandra's laptop. In particular, I was investigating any criminal conduct related to Sandra's death and, something redacted here, Sandra's laptop gave me access to approximately 12 months of iMessages, social media content, and other documents/databases. Matt and Sandra had texted thousands of times over the year, as well as communication with many other friends and family of Sandra. It was clear based on texts with Matt that he and Sandra had a sexual relationship, as he told us in his previous interview. Then there's this big redacted chunk followed by this. All of these conversations were flagged in the forensics report of her laptop. Sandra communicated often with friends and family. It appeared Sandra had sexual relationships with other men in the months leading up to her death. There were no threats of harm by any of these individuals, including Matt. End quote.
That's it?
That's literally the last sentence on the last page of the MSP report that we received. No threats of harm. So no criminal culpability.
But clearly, there is a crime here, right?
Well, put possible murder aside.
Okay.
Chief McNamara can't look into that, right? Because that's not her jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the sexual abuse of an explorer within the department she now is chief of, move out the way. Like, she is charging full steam ahead. Because here's the thing. Along with now being sure that Matthew abused a minor in the program, other witnesses come forward and say that Sandra told them he wasn't the only one. According to people who knew Sandra, and I want to preface this by saying much of this information is unconfirmed, but they say that Matthew Farwell wasn't the only Stoughton Police Department employee who Sandra had a sexual relationship with. She also had one with William Farwell, Matthew's twin brother.
What? When? How? And did the brothers know about each other's relationships with Sandra?
So William is also an officer with the Stoughton Police Department. They also met through the Explorers program because he was a guest instructor. So when they talk to him, he admits it, but like bad case of deja vu, he says that he had, quote, been with Sandra sexually maybe 2 to 3 times, and the last of which was sometime in December of 2020.
But that was when she was also seeing Matthew.
Apparently. So clearly there is something bigger happening here. So Chief McNamara's agency hires multiple PIs and outside consultants, and over the course of nearly 19 months, they go down every rabbit hole you can think of. And guess what? It didn't even end there. Implicated in the internal affairs investigation was another man named Robert Devine, who was a former deputy chief of the Stoughton Police Department and the officer in charge of the Explorers program. Robert is actually the man that brought Matthew and his twin brother into the program as guest instructors. In interviews, Robert first claims to have no knowledge of the Farwell brothers' relationships with Sandra, but then he later clarifies that Sandra did bring it up to him as a consenting adult, and Robert didn't believe her. According to Robert, while he and Sandra were never formally in touch, she would often seek him out while he was on duty, offering coffee, hanging around to talk, and showing what he described as an obsession with police officers. He said this happened about once a week.
So, she's just obsessed with them. What could they have done? What could they possibly do, Ashley?
It's a gross implication to me that she was the problem. All because she wanted to be a police officer, because she really did love that program. I mean, Sandra joined the Explorers program in 2010 when she was 13 years old, and apparently she was drawn to police officers from a very young age. They represented everything she wanted: safety, stability, the things that she didn't have growing up. Family members have said that Sandra deeply respected police, even idolized them. According to reporting from Boston Magazine, she joined the Explorers program not only to fulfill her dreams of becoming an officer herself, but also to find the mentorship and direction that she craved. But instead, she was preyed upon. Chief McNamara's investigation found that Sandra and Robert had been formally in touch and communicating by Facebook Messenger from 2020 up until her death. According to the report, Robert explains this by, quote, outrageously making claims about accounts being hacked, end quote. In McNamara's investigation, multiple witnesses interviewed also described a pattern of inappropriate conduct within the Explorer program, including hugging, kissing, even encounters in a closet involving Robert and the Farwell brothers, as well as comments like, "Come back and see me after you turn 18. One witness recalls Sandra talking about the stress officers were under and the way that they looked for outlets. In the end, McNamara recommends that Robert, William, and Matthew all have their police certifications revoked and be entered into the National Decertification Index. And there is at least one other officer from another department found to be complicit as well.
So what now? The men just get a slap on the wrist?
Well, they actually all resign before any sort of action can even be taken.
Of course.
And in September 2022, Chief McNamara holds a press conference about her investigation where she publicly addresses the entire situation for the first time.
What I'm about to brief you on is something deeply troubling to me as a human being and as a police chief. On February 4th, 2021, 23-year-old Sandra Birchmore was found deceased in her apartment in Canton. I am not here today to talk about the subsequent investigation into Miss Birchmore's death. Her death was investigated by the Norfolk District Attorney's Office. What I am here to talk about today is her life and how she was failed by, manipulated by, and used by people of authority that she admired and trusted right up into her final days. Miss Birchmore was a vulnerable person who had one constant in her life since childhood: her unwavering admiration of police officers, of those serving the military, people in uniform, people with oaths and duties to protect and serve. The admiration led her to form relationships with men who were willing to take advantage of her. The Fowler brothers in Devine violated their oaths of office and should never have the privilege of serving any community as a police officer. Through a sustained and deliberate combination of lies, deceit, and treachery, they violated the policies and the core values of the Stoughton Police Department, not to mention human decency. I stand before you today as a civil servant who is heartbroken and incensed by what has transpired, and who pledges to that this chapter in the Stoughton Police Department and the town of Stoughton is over. It must never repeat. The revolving door is closed.
Chief McNamara turns all her findings over to the Norfolk DA's office, I assume for prosecution based on her agency's findings of what would be statutory rape.
Mm-hmm.
But they declined to press any charges.
I'm sorry, what in the good old boys club is happening here?
Well, in a 2022 statement, a spokesperson for the DA says that statutory rape would be difficult to prove given that Sandra, the main witness, was dead.
Okay, but she's dead because he might have killed her. Like, this can't be the loophole.
Yeah, Sandra's family is furious over this. I haven't even spoken much about them yet, but they were fighting for her every step of the way. I mean, from the second that her aunt was notified on day one about Sandra's quote-unquote suicide, she knew something was up. I mean, not only did she know that Sandra was actually in a really happy place before her death, but also when her and other relatives went to Sandra's apartment after her death, the place gave all the signs of someone who did not take their life. When they started going through her things, everything that they saw made it seem like Sandra's passing was extremely abrupt. There were still wet clothes in the washing machine and unopened packages, plus more deliveries on the way. She even had cats that she had left unattended when police finally found her, which made zero sense because she had actually already started making plans to have somebody look after those same cats while she gave birth, which would have been like 7 months later. But one of the most telling things, I think, is what her family finds in the bedroom. They found Sandra's necklace, this keepsake from her grandmother. It was this thin gold chain with like a pink flamingo charm, and it was laying on the floor. The chain had snapped in the middle, and then there was this clump of hair tangled in it.
I mean, to me, that feels like a sign of a struggle. Did police not see it?
Well, apparently the necklace was broken and like hanging off of her neck when they found her, which is documented with photographs, but it wasn't collected. So I guess officers didn't think it was relevant. So when it fell to the floor as they're, I assume, like moving her body, they either didn't notice it or like didn't care and collect it.
And did the family show them?
Oh yeah, they handed over the necklace to police right away, but that apparently didn't change anything for them. So the family members took it upon themselves to galvanize the community on social media, getting people who knew Sandra to come forward and share stories. So many stories that pointed to the Explorer program and stories that helped build out McNamara's internal investigation. So now to hear that nothing was going to come of it, like that was infuriating. So in December of 2022, Sandra's family tries a different approach. They file a wrongful death suit in Norfolk County Superior Court, accusing Matthew, William, and Robert of grooming and sexually abusing Sandra from a young age and implicating them in her death. The family alleges wrongful death, negligent supervision, negligent retention, pain and suffering, and emotional distress, among other things. And they specifically mention an ongoing scheme of grooming and misconduct, which they say led to Sandra's death. So that litigation is still ongoing, and a judgment date is set for May of 2026.
So Sandra's family members are really the only ones actually looking into her death as anything other than a suicide.
But this is what I was saying, where you get this moment where you're like, the system is not working, everything's broken, but there are good eggs within it. So we've got Chief McNamara, who has this investigation exposing her officers for their abhorrent behavior. And then, maybe because of her, maybe because of something else, like another big case involving Canton PD and MSP that happens in 2022.
John O'Keefe.
Yeah, maybe because of all the pressure and the spotlight combined, at some point, other good people step in and say, nah, not on our watch. And that's the FBI. Now, it's not really clear how the FBI investigation timeline unfolded. They haven't been very public about that.
They aren't known to be very public
about anything. But on August 28th, 2024, Special Agent Shanae Castrita releases a 45-page affidavit with all of her findings. And it details exactly what they think happened and why. Agent Castrita confirms what we already know about Matthew grooming Sandra when she was a child, and lays out Matthew's motive for murder in clear terms. She writes that in October of 2020, when Sandra heard about Matthew's wife's pregnancy, she went to him with an ultimatum. She wouldn't expose their years-long sexual relationship, including the fact that it began when she was underage and that they'd been meeting while Matthew was on duty, if he agreed to try and get her pregnant. Their text even shows Sandra sending Matthew her ovulation schedule, and the two of them planning sexual encounters around it. But when Sandra got pregnant, she started telling people about it, and that wasn't part of the deal. The affidavit actually puts forward that on January 20th, when that friend Jill called Stoughton PD and spilled the beans about Matthew and Sandra, causing that officer to question Matthew, that is the very moment that Matthew hatched a plan to kill her. And all those heart-to-hearts after that, Agent Castrita says were, quote, his attempt to appease Birchmore until he could kill her, end quote. And they have physical proof, they say. The FBI analyzed the data from the health app on Sandra's iPhone. Her last movements were recorded at 9:40 p.m. That is 3 minutes before Matthew was seen leaving her building. So it's likely this data shows exactly when Sandra died, and Matthew was still inside the apartment.
And when he left, he could have used the key that he had to lock up behind him.
Right. And Agent Castrita backs this up by tapping expert forensic physician Dr. William Smock. He specializes in asphyxiation cases and testified in the Derek Chauvin trial about George Floyd's murder. According to the affidavit, Smock's findings directly contradict what state police concluded. He pointed out that the fracture in Sandra's hyoid bone, which is at the top of the neck, didn't line up with the position that she was found in. Smock explained that when someone is found seated, it is considered an incomplete hanging, meaning that only part of the body's weight is actually pulling on the neck. And in his deep dive through forensic research, he could not find a single documented case of a woman fracturing her hyoid bone in that kind of scenario. Instead, those fractures overwhelmingly show up in cases of manual strangulation or when the full weight of the body is suspended. So he concludes with, quote, a reasonable degree of medical and scientific certainty that the cause of Miss Birchmore's death is asphyxia and that the manner of her death is homicide, end quote. And something else really interesting that Agent Castrita writes is that after Matthew consented to handing his personal cell phone over to state police, he used his work phone to search and then immediately delete searches for.
Right.
Whether deleted iMessages can be recovered and whether someone can revoke consent in Massachusetts. And it's on the last page of this document that Agent Castrita writes this, quote, the information set forth above supports the government's motion to detain Matthew Farwell pending trial in this case. And that is how, on the very date Agent Castrita files her report, Matthew Farwell is arrested.
So how did the FBI get jurisdiction of the case in order to make the arrest? Like, do they just, trump state agencies by default?
No, the FBI makes an ingenious move to charge Matthew with one count of killing a witness or victim, which is a federal crime charge that often appears in connection with other federal charges, like sometimes in mob cases or crime rings that span multiple states.
But in this case, it allowed the FBI to step in without involving MSP.
Exactly. And this charge also happens to be punishable by death. So that same day, Matthew pleads not guilty at an arraignment. And as of this recording, Matthew has been indicted by a federal grand jury, and his trial is currently scheduled to begin on October 5th, 2026. Until then, he's being held without bail at a detention facility in Rhode Island. And our reporter, Nicole Kagan, actually reached out to his attorney for comment, but as of this recording, we have not heard anything back. There is news still breaking in this case, though. The strangest thing to me was broken by the Boston Globe earlier this year. They wrote that people familiar with the investigation who spoke on the condition of anonymity said that DNA testing showed Matthew was not the biological father of Sandra's unborn baby.
Okay, first of all, who are these sources? I need to know.
Same, but I have no idea.
And secondly, the motive still makes sense for me, though, because if Matthew thought he was the father, which it really seems like he did from the text messages, that's your motive. And also, he refused to give his DNA at first, right?
Well, also, he had a twin brother who admitted to sleeping with Sandra at the same time. And my own PSA, I no longer trust adult twins who work at the same place if that place gives them access to children. I know that sounds specific, but I just listened to the newest season of Dig and oh, hell no, there is a pattern here. But there is also another pattern that I found, one with the Explorers program. Sandra's story is one that did get a decent amount of attention and had been kind of living in the back of my brain since 2022, ish when I first heard about it. And in digging into that, this local article from here in Indianapolis popped up and grabbed my attention. It was from April 14th, 2022. It said, IMPD officer tied to teen suicide ordered to write weekly journal in rare sentence. And that's kind of like Crime Junkie clickbait.
Yeah.
And when I began reading, I had this weird deja vu. Deleted text messages, the Police Explorers program. So I began to wonder, maybe William and Matthew and Robert weren't a couple of bad apples in the system. What if the program is designed in a way that actually attracts predators and puts children at risk? Parents are sending their kids off to work with the police because, you couldn't be safer, right? Wrong. The more I looked, the more I found. And our reporter, Nina, and I have spent months, the better part of a year, uncovering systematic issues with the Explorers program. And next week, we are going to be releasing an entire episode with every twisted detail we found. So for those of you who don't want to wait, you can actually listen to that episode right now in our fan club app. I think everyone needs to know about it. But it is truly required listening for anyone considering the program or for any parent who has a kid in it. This is something that we can't just look away from and hope stuff that stops happening. We have to shine a light directly on it. So tell everyone you know. Next week's episode of Crime Junkie is required listening for everyone, so you know what is there and how you can keep your kids and your friends safe. You can find all of our source material for this episode on our website, crimejunkie.com. And don't forget, if you want to listen to more episodes like this, all of our episodes completely ad-free, and next week's episode early, be sure to join our fan club. You'll get early access to new episodes every week and bonus content every month.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Crime Junkie Podcast.
We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. There's something intuitive in us that if we trust can tell us when we're in trouble. It's not always an alarm. Sometimes it's a quiet feeling, warning you of someone's presence, telling you that you're not alone. That is the very feeling that woke up 19-year-old Rachel Hansen from sleep one June night in 2022. The adrenaline coursing through her spiked when she opened her eyes to find someone standing over her bed staring at her. Rachel let out a scream, and that sent the person running out of her room and then out of the apartment completely, without ever uttering a word. And that should have been the worst thing that happened to Rachel in that Gilbert, Arizona apartment. But it wasn't, because the very next night, when Rachel was asleep in bed, just after 2 a.m., a dark figure entered her bedroom again, held up a gun, and shot her in the abdomen before fleeing. Was the first break-in unrelated? Or was it a warning, a bad omen of what was to come? To this day, no suspects have been named. And if you read the heavily redacted 338-page police file that Gilbert Police Department released in 2024, you'll learn a whole lot of nothing. But to leave it at that is not exactly the Crime Junkie nature. So our team did some investigating. Join us as we unravel the mystery of who killed Rachel Hansen. When the person who shot Rachel Hansen fled her apartment around 2 a.m. on June 4th, 2022, she was still alive. Rachel was bleeding from her abdomen and her upper back where the bullet had entered and exited, but she could still move, so she grabbed her phone and rushed to the apartment bathroom where she called 911. Rachel knows that she's in bad condition, so she wastes no time when the call connects. "I've been shot," she tells them. "Someone broke in and shot me." In about 5 minutes, first responders are there at the scene, and they start working on her there before rushing her to the hospital. But the bullet that went through her just did too much damage, and after 3 hours in surgery, doctors couldn't save her. But here's the tragedy on top of the tragedy. When Rachel went to the hospital, and while she was in surgery, her family had no idea. Our reporter Nicole Kagan spoke to Rachel's mom, Kim Hansen, and she said that no one came to notify the family until 7 a.m. after Rachel had died. No one called them when Rachel was found or when she was in surgery at the hospital, which still bothers Kim to this day, knowing that her daughter was there all alone. But that is far from the only thing that bothers her. There would be plenty more heartbreak and disappointment coming. She just didn't know it yet. Because like so many people who never have to live the true crime story, when this all unfolded, Kim was under the impression that the criminal justice system worked, that all detectives knew how to do their jobs and that they did them well. Well, that bubble would burst in a hard way, which brings me back to the crime scene. Now, as far as scenes go, Rachel's was simple to process. According to the police file, aside from the blood on her mattress and in her bathroom, and the bullet and shell casing, nothing seemed out of place. In fact, there was barely any furniture at all in sight, just her box spring and mattress. I mean, the only thing really notable about the state of the apartment that I can tell from the police file is the smell, because apparently it reeks of marijuana. And as officers began canvassing neighbors, they learned that this smell had been there for the last 6 months. And over that time, there were random people coming and going from the unit and loud arguments. And those who lived around Unit 3133 assumed that drugs were being sold out of there and that the young woman who lived there clearly had a bad relationship with her boyfriend, which they would have gotten a front row to, because when Nicole went to this apartment complex, not only are the units pretty close together, but just walking the hallway, she could clearly hear people talking and watching TV inside their apartments.
Paper thin walls.
Yeah. But here's what's so strange. On the night Rachel died, they heard nothing.
How? I mean, even if you were sleeping...
I feel like you would hear a gunshot. That would totally wake you up.
Yeah, could they have used a silencer on the gun?
So that was my first thought, right? But I don't know if this killer was being mindful of noise, because while there were no signs of forced entry to Rachel's front door, we actually know from pictures of the apartment that Kim took after it was cleared by police that someone kicked the crap out of Rachel's bedroom door. And this is one of those details that just doesn't compute for me. Even if Rachel's bedroom door was locked, you can see from the picture, I don't know if you had those where it's you can use a nail to turn it. So why go through the trouble of kicking it in and making all that noise? And what's even weirder still is that even with the door kicked in, apparently the neighbors still heard nothing. Like, I personally spoke to the neighbor who lived right across from Rachel, and they said that they weren't even sleeping when this happened. They had just gotten back from bowling at like 1:30 or 2 o'clock in the morning. They're like fully awake when the shot would have been fired, which means they would have been awake when the door was kicked in, if it happened then too. And they were awake when Rachel would have called 911 and awake when police were showing up to the apartment and like talking to the people who are now across the hall. How did they hear nothing? Not just like the stuff I mentioned, but like no hurried footsteps, no running away.
Nothing.
No argument. Yeah, they didn't see anything either. And a shady person lingering, I think, would have stood out because despite whatever was going on for 6 months in Unit 3133, this was a nice and safe area, like a gated community, in fact.
Does it have any cameras then?
Oh, it does, but kind of like the gatedness of this community, it feels like it was a little all for show. The leasing office told investigators that there were no operational cameras anywhere in the complex. And when Nicole went to the complex, now mind you, this is like 3+ years post-homicide, but every time she went down to check the gate, it's just like wide open.
Cool.
But building security aside, one of Rachel's neighbors did have a working Ring camera. And this is the first frustrating roadblock in the highly redacted records that we got. Nearly all of what they learned from the Ring camera footage is redacted. Some of the only information that is not says that a camera caught Rachel on June 3rd, like 5 hours before the shooting. So it had been like 9:15 p.m. And she was with a long-haired man walking to the east on the first floor hall. Now, she lived on the 3rd floor, so this might have been when she like first gets there. Then a different investigator wrote in another report that at 9:33, quote, the two are seen walking away from her apartment and that Rachel is dressed in what looks like a swimsuit. When they come back, what other cameras they might have been seen on, I don't know, all redacted. But listen, we don't need to spiral and speculate too much, at least about who this long-haired man was. Because once police finally do notify Rachel's family of her death, again, 5 hours after she was shot, they figure that out pretty quickly. When police knock on Rachel's parents' door, her dad, Todd, answers. Her mom, Kim, was actually in Indiana visiting grandchildren. But officers figure out that the guy with long hair, that is probably Rachel's fiance, Jomette Bailey. And they learn something else critical. Rachel had just moved back into that apartment. June 2nd was her very first night staying there.
So she's not who everyone thought was selling drugs and fighting with her boyfriend. She hasn't been there.
No. And that's also why the apartment was empty. Her dad tells police that the apartment, it was in Rachel's name, but she had been doing like an off-the-book subletting thing for like the last 6 months.
And who is this subletter?
In that moment, Dad's not sure. I mean, it wasn't someone she was super close with, so it like takes a minute to track that down, which honestly is like fine because first things first, detectives want to talk to her fiance, Jomette. Now, the police report says that they bring Jomette in the next day, which would have been Sunday, June 5th. But Rachel's mom told us that that's wrong, that they brought Jomette right in after they talked to Todd. So this would have been like 8 a.m. on the 4th. And she's certain of it. We tried to ask police to verify this, but a spokesperson for the department said that they could not provide clarifying information, citing an active investigation, and Jomette didn't respond to a request for comment. But either way, in this interview, which lasts about 4 hours, Jomette is super distraught, but he readily admits to being with Rachel that night. He says that he stayed with her at the apartment until around midnight when he went home.
And of course, we can't corroborate that because we don't know what else was on the Ring cameras.
Yeah, we can't, but I assume police did because they end up clearing him after what Kim described as like weeks of merciless interrogation.
And Kim and Todd are on the same page as police? Like they're not suspicious of Jomette?
Well, Kim told Nicole that they didn't have an ounce of doubt that Jomette was innocent. I mean, day one, when they were fresh in like the throes of things, Todd did sit him down and was basically like, look me in the eyes, tell me the truth, man to man, did you kill my daughter? And apparently Jomette looks right at him and without even wavering says, no, I would never do that. And they believe him. Kim and Todd had gotten to know Jomette really well since he'd proposed to Rachel earlier that year. Like, they just couldn't see him doing something like this. And Kim says that Jomette was absolutely destroyed in the wake of Rachel's death. And for like 6 months afterwards, he couldn't eat. He had this like tremendous guilt. He couldn't hold down a job. And he actually lived with the Hansons for a good portion of that time.
Did he and Rachel live together?
No, they didn't, but he did stay with her a lot. And actually, between him and Kim, they're actually able to give police one of the most interesting leads in this whole case, because they both knew about the intruder who'd come into Rachel's room and stood over her the night before she was killed.
Wait, did police not know about that right away?
Well, no, because after it happened, Rachel didn't call the police about it.
What?
Yeah, so let me just tell you like the whole story that got pieced together, because it is really strange.
In the parks and forests you love, there are stories waiting to be told. I'm Delia D'Ambra, the host of Park Predators, a true crime podcast that reminds you, sometimes the most beautiful places hide the darkest secrets. Listen now wherever you get your podcasts.
So Thursday, June 1st is the first day that Rachel gets access back to her apartment in like the last 6 months. Now, she had no idea what had been going on there while she was gone, so she was pretty shocked to find the place a mess, like super dirty, and the smell of marijuana was so strong, like replaced the carpet strong. So she knew that before she began moving any of her stuff back in, she was gonna need to do like a really deep clean of this place. So that's what she spent Thursday doing. She literally had next to nothing in the place, just her box spring and her mattress. I mean, there wasn't even food in the kitchen. So that first night, she ends up staying with Jomette. She comes back the next day, does like more cleaning. And that second day is the first night she's like staying in her place. And that was the opening of this story. She is just woken up by this feeling of someone there watching her in her room. But when she wakes up, the person runs. And afterward, Rachel didn't want to be alone, so she texts Jomette and asked him to come over.
I don't get why she didn't want to call the police.
Because I don't think she actually believed that she was in danger. So her door had been locked. So for this person to get in, they had to have had a key. And because they didn't actually do anything, she kind of figured that it was someone who was maybe connected to her subletter, someone who had a key, came in, and then when they saw that she was someone else, they realized their mistake and just like booked it. So she's like chalking this whole thing up to like a misunderstanding. But here's a weird little fact I cannot let go of. This person didn't do anything, didn't take anything.
Not much to take.
But they did leave something behind. A jar of pickles, like sitting right there on the kitchen counter.
Okay, I didn't know what I thought you were going to say, but jar of pickles was like very, very far down on the list.
It's so odd. I mean, it's so weird that Rachel pointed it out to her mom and Jomette. And I mean, the benignness of this is probably part of what made her think that this wasn't some like knife-wielding maniac and just like a friend coming to see the wrong person
with
and eat pickles.
Jar of pickles.
Anyway, that night when she texts Jomette, they decide that, like, at a minimum, they need to change the locks, right? Like, because even if this person didn't do anything, who knows how many other people might have keys, right? So Jomette grabbed this spare deadbolt from his dad's house and installed it on her door that night. Situation handled.
Wait, then how would an intruder be able to get into her apartment the next night?
This is the part of the story that makes you just want to, like, reach back into the past and like if we could change one thing, maybe everything would be different. So this night, Friday, June 3rd, we know her and Jomette are at the apartment together. And by the time Jomette leaves around midnight, Rachel was asleep. Now, according to what he told Kim and his own mom, who we talked to as well, Jomette woke Rachel up and he's like, listen, I have to go, but when I leave, I need you to get up and lock the door behind me. And it was like a deadbolt, so you had to physically turn and lock the door. And Rachel agreed, but then when Jomette left, he said he didn't hear the door lock. So he actually went back inside and told Rachel again, like, listen, you have to get up and lock the door behind me. Are you going to get up? And she said yes. And so he left. But apparently, he never heard the door lock.
So if she fell back asleep, someone didn't even need a key. They could have just walked right in.
Yeah, it seems that way.
But they wouldn't have known that. So this person was either planning on using an old key, which wouldn't have worked, or breaking in.
Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I don't know what it means. Everything I just told you is about the extent of what you can learn from the police report. There are a lot of little snippets of information, but with all the redactions, it's almost impossible to piece together anything coherent. And when we reached out to Gilbert PD to try and get some clarity, they said that they, quote, continue to actively investigate Rachel's case, end quote, but that was about it. And by the way, this isn't just like all we have to work with. This is all that Rachel's own family has to work with. I mean, for the first 2 years, Kim was meeting with detectives every 4 months or so, but she rarely learned anything new. And she believed that investigators were working on her daughter's case because that's what they kept telling her they were doing. And she doesn't know how this works, right? Like, she has to trust them. But a lot of trust is lost by the winter of 2024 when Gilbert PD declares Rachel's case inactive. And that's right about the same time that the Hansons start working with a private investigator named Justin Yentis. He said that he kind of went into the meeting with them more to just like listen, see how he could advise them. But after learning Rachel's story, Justin knew that he needed to help. So he took on the case pro bono and has been working it ever since. And after talking with him and Rachel's mom and Jomette's mom and others, it is safe to say that there is way more bubbling under the surface of this case than the police report would lead you to believe. Specifically, these conversations that we had revealed 3 investigative theories. None of them are perfect. They all have holes, but each also has the potential to be the answer as to what happened to Rachel and why. But to understand each of them, we almost need to work backwards from the shooting and take them one by one, starting with the subletter theory. Now, I'm starting with the subletter theory because if you're looking at this case from the outside, it seems the most obvious. So let's rewind to a year before the shooting, June 2021. That is when Rachel moved out of her childhood home and rented that 1-bedroom apartment at the Redstone at Santan Village complex in Gilbert. She was there for about 6 months when she got her dream job. Basically, she was offered to live and work at a horse ranch less than 30 minutes away in Queen Creek, Arizona. And Rachel had been working with horses her entire life. Like, this job would allow her to live in this little casita on the ranch with the horses literally right outside her window. Plus, she could bring her own horse, Dash, with her. Like, she just could not pass this up. But that meant that she had to find someone to sublet her apartment, and like pretty quick. So she posted an ad on Facebook Marketplace, and through that, she connected with a woman named America. And they basically just like work out this deal.
So they didn't know each other before this?
According to Kim, no. Rachel and America only met like once or twice, and then America moved in. And remember, Rachel didn't quite go through the proper channels at her apartment complex to get permission to sublease. It was very like off the books, which her parents say they were not supportive of. Both of them tried to talk Rachel out of this arrangement, but she assured them that she and America had met. Everything would be fine. So for 6 months, Rachel and America had a strictly business relationship. So Rachel had no idea what she was up to at the apartment. But Rachel's neighbors had their guesses, like I said before. They believed that there were drug sales happening out of the unit. But again, Rachel knew none of this.
So it's not like she kicked America out because of everything going on or because she was afraid she was in trouble or going to get in trouble or anything?
No, she ended up kicking America out because she got fired from her job at the ranch. And so without her ranch job,
she didn't have a place to live.
Exactly, which meant that she had to tell America that she needed to like get out of the apartment ASAP. So everything moved kind of quick. America leaving, Rachel coming back. And this is the basis for the subletter theory, which is that Rachel was the unintended target, that whoever shot her was actually targeting America and didn't know that she had moved out 2 days prior.
So in this theory, are the intruder and the shooter the same person?
In this theory, that wouldn't really make sense for them to be the same person because the intruder would have realized that Rachel was in America on that first night. But I mean, we know from neighbors that like people would come and go from there. So like, even if they weren't the same person, it doesn't mean that they weren't both there for America, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but don't you think if they weren't the same person that the first intruder would have come forward though? Like, and said like, hey, like this happened, it wasn't me the second night?
Not necessarily. I mean, like as sad as it sounds, if that person's not the shooter, they could be afraid of being pinned as the perpetrator. Or like maybe they were there to buy drugs and they don't want to put themselves on police's radar for that. Especially if, and this is just a theory, but they especially don't want to be associated with anything drug-related happening out of there if there's any chance the shooter could have been targeting America for a related reason.
Can you tell if police ever looked into this theory?
We think so based on what Kim told Nicole. Like, she said that early on in the investigation, police took Rachel's devices. So they had access to everybody she had talked to. And they told Kim that they were bringing in people for questioning every day as they went through Rachel's contacts and got warrants for her social media accounts, including Facebook, which Kim knows is how Rachel met America. Now, from what I can make out reading between the redactions, it looks like at least one individual who was involved in drug sales while America was living in Rachel's apartment was questioned, but that seemingly went nowhere. In fact, all we and Rachel's family know about America is her first name. We don't even know what she looked like.
I was just going to ask if she and Rachel resembled each other at all.
No idea. Justin, the PI, said that he's actively working to connect with America, but he wouldn't give us any more information about how. So at least in his eyes, this theory is still very much on the table.
I feel like it seems so unlikely that two different people would enter the same apartment 2 nights in a row.
I know.
And so it's more likely to be the same person. And if it's the same person, it can't be mistaken identity.
Which brings me to theory number 2. The horse ranch theory. Now, I want to note, this is one of the theories that the public really ran with after Rachel's death. But to be upfront with everyone, at least at this point, I think it's the least likely for reasons that we'll get into. But I am going to lay it out because the context around it is really important in terms of understanding Rachel's mental state at the time of her death. So let me rewind to before the shooting in June 2022. Before Rachel ever even moved out of her childhood home in June 2021. We're going to go all the way back to Rachel's childhood, specifically a period of time that Kim refers to as the dark years. Kim and Todd brought Rachel into their family in February of 2009 when she was just 6 years old. They were experienced foster parents active in the system for about 18 years, and there were about 100 kids that passed through their home. Now, in 2009, they weren't actively looking to take in any more kids, so it was a surprise when Rachel's caseworker reached out. But it quickly became clear that this wasn't just a routine call. This was a last resort because Rachel was in a really bad situation and she needed a new home right then. You see, Rachel's bio mom had her while she was in rehab, and when she got out, she and Rachel went to live with a man that Rachel assumed was her father or grandfather, but Kim says that this guy was actually an unrelated cocaine dealer. Now, Rachel remembered very little from this time of her life, but she told Kim that one night, her birth mom said that she was going to go to the store for some milk, and then she just never came back. And from then on, it was just Rachel and this older guy. And it is during this time that people seem to know nothing about. These are the dark years. Even Rachel couldn't or wouldn't fill in the blanks, but she was little. All Kim knows is that one day, Rachel came home from kindergarten to find the man that she lived with dead on the floor of the apartment, apparently an accident. And then 5-year-old Rachel was promptly taken into a child crisis center in Phoenix and then placed into a foster home with a couple who promised that they would adopt her. But 6 months later, they changed their minds. So that is when Rachel's caseworker called Kim. Now, when Rachel got to the Hansen house, she fit in perfectly. There were 9 other little boys and girls, and Rachel fell right in the middle, which meant that there were always other kids to play with. Plus, she loved her new school, but the trauma from those dark years was impossible to ignore. And Rachel ended up being diagnosed with reactive attachment disorder, which meant that forming, I'm sure you know this, forming healthy relationships with caregivers was incredibly hard for her. And for a while, nothing seemed to break through until Rachel herself suggested something unexpected. Horses.
Oh, equine therapy.
Exactly. 6-year-old Rachel likely didn't know that equine therapy was a thing.
Right.
But Kim says she was just drawn to horses. She would ask to be around them constantly. So, Kim's why not?
Yeah.
And from the moment that they got Rachel her first horse, there was like no going back. She fell head over heels in love with being a horse owner, and it helped her build confidence and just like blossom as a young girl.
Horse girl.
As a horse girl, I'm sure you know. And listen, this passion stuck with her through middle school and high school. She ended up graduating early at just 16. She earned a full scholarship to Northern Arizona University. And all the while, in her free time, she was still riding, still caring for, still working with horses, first her own, and then she was being hired by others to care for theirs. And after graduating from high school, she decided to make these gigs official by like starting her own business with it.
Like a college side hustle.
No. So Rachel never ended up actually like going to college. She enrolled, she made the arrangements, right? She got that full scholarship, but she was going to begin her freshman year. And then like a week before move-in, Kim says that Rachel had this like panic attack. Like being that far from home suddenly felt super overwhelming to her. So instead of going to college, Rachel told her mom that she was ready to start her life now. Like she'd get her own place, focus on her business. Like if she wanted a degree, like she could go back and do that later. But I mean, it's also pretty rare to like know what you want to do that young. So when Rachel got the offer to live and work at the horse ranch in Queen Creek, clearly she couldn't turn it down. This was her dream job, and it only took her 30 minutes away from home.
So how did things go sideways?
It sounds like it happened gradually. So the owners of the ranch, Liz Robinson and Amanda Crugan, they didn't respond to us on advice of their attorney, and they wouldn't speak to Kim and Todd's PI either. But our reporter, Nicole, was able to reach their attorney. So what I'm going to outline is everything I know from Nicole's conversation with their attorney, her conversation with Kim, and then the little we can glean from the police file. So it sounds like things at the ranch started out great. I mean, Rachel got the impression that the owners didn't necessarily know a whole lot about horses, but like she didn't mind, like this is her job. I mean, she loved the work and she was getting paid to do it. Like this was amazing. But then things started going wrong. In an interview in the police file, which I'm going to guess is with Amanda, like her name, I only guess this because her name was left unredacted one time. Like, I don't know if that was a mistake, but in this interview, it says, quote, Rachel was not keeping up with the agreement regarding training the horses, end quote.
What was the agreement?
Nicole asked Kim, and she gave us this example. So there was a young horse that Rachel was training for riding. And if you know anything about horses, you know that you can't just like hop on one once it's big enough and expect to be able to ride it. Like
it's like a process. It's
a
long thing.
Yeah. Like it takes a while before someone can get on a horse and like get on a horse and it be safe. But Kim says that apparently the owners felt like Rachel was moving too slowly. They wanted her to get on this horse like ASAP. Now, Rachel told her mom that she knew the horse wasn't ready, but she was afraid that if she refused, she would get in trouble. So she got on the horse, and within like 30 seconds, the horse threw her off. Now, she wasn't injured, but that moment created a trust fracture, basically, between Rachel and the owners. And it feels like things just went downhill from there. Like there was this one time that Rachel, quote, caused approximately $10,000 worth of damage to a horse trailer, end quote. There was another time that Rachel needed surgery on her finger after being kicked by a horse, which led to a disagreement with the owners about when she could safely return to work. But the final straw came in May of 2022. So Rachel had helped broker a sale, like one of the horses at the ranch, in exchange for 3 other horses. But only one horse arrived. And so because this deal fell apart, layered on top of everything else, the owners fired Rachel. And so this is right around May 24th, 2022. And this took a huge toll on Rachel's mental health. There's actually an incident outlined in the police report that says on May 27th, so this is 3 days later, Rachel took her handgun and drove up to Sedona, and she called the ranch owners, told them she was thinking about suicide. Thankfully, they called 911, and police were able to get to her before she did anything. And they were able to convince her to check herself into Verde Valley Medical Center for treatment. And I want to add that it wasn't just the job that was weighing on Rachel. She and Jomette were having relationship troubles too. And to make everything worse, the day after Rachel was admitted for treatment, she learned that the owners of the ranch were refusing to return her horse Dash until they received $5,000 that Rachel allegedly owed them for services rendered to Dash while she was living on the property, like things like vet care, fees, stuff like that. The owners basically gave Rachel's dad, Todd, their attorney's number and is like, listen, work it out with him. So Hearing that her horse was essentially being held for ransom, Rachel decided she needed to get out of this treatment center ASAP. She had to sort everything out. Dash's return, her relationship with Jomette, moving back to her apartment now that she had nowhere to live. So on June 1st, we're now right here. This is the first day she's back. She checks out. As we know, the next day we get the pickle intruder.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, we get the shooting.
So I guess what's the theory that the owners targeted Rachel?
Basically. And this is what I'm saying. It's far-fetched in my mind.
Well, yeah, especially when they were the ones to call 911 about Rachel's mental health incident.
I know, but for some reason, this is the one theory that got a ton of traction online and even in the news. Liz and Amanda's attorney said that everybody was taking to Facebook and dragging his clients' names through the mud, accusing them of Rachel's murder. People started leaving them harassing messages and calling investigators about them.
I mean, are these women dangerous? I guess I'm missing the jump here.
Yeah, so from what we found, they both have criminal records, but mostly for driving infractions, nothing violent.
Okay.
And Kim said that Rachel never felt like she was in danger at their ranch. It was actually Amanda and Liz who gave Rachel the handgun that she took to Sedona. They gave it to her for protection earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
But because there was so much negativity swirling around the ranch owners with Dash and the job, everyone I think just kind of jumped to this conclusion. Now, Liz and Amanda's attorney said that they both spoke to investigators within the first few days of the murder, and they were cleared based on alibis. And he also said that he thought the police files were over-redacted, which, same. But in his case, if Liz and Amanda really were cleared right away, then I would think that there are lines that could actually prove their innocence, in the file. Why wouldn't we? And I think they would even want that.
Yeah, and with the files being so redacted, it's just keeping Liz and Amanda under public suspicion.
Exactly.
Did the Hansons ever get Dash back? I don't want to
the
horse too hard.
Yeah, no, they did. So Liz and Amanda's attorney said that the fee was paid and that the
Mm-hmm.
Hansons were able to get Dash back. I think it was a month after Rachel was killed. So this brings me to my third theory, the Gary Bailey theory, aka Jomette's dad.
What?
So remember how I said Rachel and Jomette were having relationship trouble around the time she was fired?
Yeah.
Well, a lot of that tension centered around Gary, his dad. By all accounts, he and Rachel did not get along. Jomette was extremely close with his dad. And Nicole actually spoke with Jomette's mom, Ava, for this episode. And she said that Jomette didn't have many friends because he and Gary would just do everything together. To the point where Ava actually felt bad for her other son. Now, things were fine at first when Rachel and Jomette got together, but their relationship progressed pretty fast. 8 months after they met, they got engaged. And the closer Rachel and Jomette got, the more Gary had someone to compete for Jomette's attention. And Rachel told her mom, Kim, that she felt like Gary was disturbed by the possibility of losing Jomette, so he intentionally would try to cause conflict between them. And to make everything worse, right around the time Rachel and Jomette were getting really serious, Ava filed for divorce from Gary, something that she'd been wanting to do for a long time. And may I take you on a quick side quest?
You never have to ask for permission, but of course.
So I need to tell you about Ava and Gary's relationship. So back in 2015, she told us that she had been suspicious Gary was cheating on her. So she put a recording device in his work truck every day for a month. He ran a landscaping business, spent a lot of time riding around his truck. So if something was going down, she knew this is where she would catch wind of it. Girl got more than just wind. She got recordings of Gary on tape, cheating on her with the men he employed.
What?
Yeah, so she went to Gary with these recordings being like, I know what you've been doing. I want a divorce. Literally, you can have everything. I just want the kids. But freaking Gary, he's like, oh, that's not me cheating. I knew you were recording, so I staged all of this.
I'm sorry.
I know. We tried every possible way to reach Gary for this episode, but he never got back to us. But I know from Ava that in response to her request for a divorce, Gary apparently said that he wanted to take Ava to court over it. So not wanting to lose her kids, Ava promised herself that she would stay with Gary until all the kids were adults. Whoop, which brings us to September 2021. Ava was ready to end it, and she texted her bishop to let him know. But what she didn't know is that when she texted her bishop, she made a group chat with Bishop and Gary.
That's constantly my worst nightmare.
And when Gary received that text, dude lost it. Apparently, he had this major personality shift, and he started acting really strangely. Him and Ava started sleeping in different rooms, and Ava said that she heard that Gary was bad-mouthing her all over town and at church. Nicole actually spoke to one of these church members. Her name's Jennifer Simmons, and she said that Gary's whole temperament changed so much, he was just angry all the time and constantly ranting, that they started referring to him as Scary Gary and avoiding him at all costs. And things just escalated from there. In November 2021, there was this one day where Gary recorded himself barging into an apartment that Ava was staying at, saying awful things about how she was cheating on him and that he was there to catch her having sex. Mind you, Ava was fully clothed, watching TV in her bedroom. And she called the police after this, but not before Gary sent the video to their entire family and people from church.
A video of her watching TV.
Yeah.
Dude, you're the only one who looks bad in this video, Scary Gary.
I know. So after this incident, that's when Ava got an order of protection against him. Then, in December, there was an instance where the Hansons actually had to kick Gary out of their home because of the way he was speaking about Ava at their dinner table. That was the first and only time that he was ever in their house. And right after that, Jomette proposed to Rachel, which apparently just sent Gary off even more. He started conflating the two women in his head. Ava said that he started calling Ava Rachel and Rachel Ava. And according to what Kim said happened next, it sounds like things might have finally come to a head. On April 27th, 2022, this is just over a month before Rachel would be murdered, everything boiled over. So Rachel was at a point where she was fed up with Gary inserting himself into her relationship with Jomette. So according to Ava, Rachel texted Jomette an ultimatum. It is either your dad or it's me. The conversation spiraled. Jomette messaged back that he was tired of life and that he was experiencing suicidal thoughts. So Rachel panicked, tried calling him, but he wasn't answering. Wasn't even answering for his mom either. So Rachel drove to Gary's house to see if Jomette was there. He wasn't, but Gary was. He was actually in his car in the driveway. And at this point, Rachel might have actually been happy to see him because she knew if Jomette was going to answer the phone for anyone, it was
his dad.
It was his dad, right. But she asked Gary to call him, and Gary's no, he refused.
Why?
Gary's well, basically he said he didn't take the suicide threat seriously. But Rachel still was. So she blocked the driveway with the car that she was driving and refused to let Gary leave until he would call his son. And what happens next happened fast. Gary put his car in reverse, backed into the car that Rachel was in, tried and failed to pull her out of it, and then gave up and drove away right over the front lawn. Now, when this happened, Rachel called police, and then shortly after they arrived, Jomette was found. He's safe. But Rachel, understandably, is totally shaken up.
Yeah.
According to the police report, officers found her crying in front of Gary's house, and she recounted the whole confrontation to them, including another chilling detail. She said that day, Gary sent her a text that read, "If I ever see you in my house again, I will shoot you in the head." And she said that he had been threatening her for a while. Now, no charges were filed after this. And then Rachel was killed.
And what is Jomette saying about all this? Whose side is he taking?
He seemed to have been torn down the middle. Like I said, he never got back to us for this episode. But what I do know from his mom, Ava, is that he and Rachel's relationship got so rocky after this that they actually called off their engagement. And then, as you know, Rachel gets fired. Her mental health declines. She spends some time in that facility. But her first night out, remember, she goes to clean her apartment, but then rather than staying there or going to her parents, she actually went to Ava's to stay the night with Jomette. And Ava said they basically just She calls it like hitting the reset button. They talked everything out and got to a really good place.
So that's June 1st.
June 1st, yes. And Ava said the next day, June 2nd.
Pickle intruder.
Yes. That day, one of her daughters told Gary about the rekindling, that they're like back together.
Oh.
And Gary is pissed. Then there is a part of June 3rd that I haven't told you yet. So the night of the shooting, Joe Matt is with Rachel, right?
Yeah.
And he's there till like midnight. Well, here's the interesting part. He wasn't planning to leave. He was actually sleeping shortly before he left. The only reason he left was because he got a call from his dad telling him to come home.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Wait. Like, why is he telling him to come home in the middle of the night on the same night that Rachel got murdered?
There is no explanation in the police records
That you could see.
but we found one somewhere else. So remember that woman, Jennifer, who went to church with Gary?
The woman who gave us the Scary Gary moniker.
Thank you, Jennifer. So she said that Gary told the whole congregation why he called on the morning of June 5th at church. So apparently, Scary Gary showed up to church by himself, went up to the pulpit to, you're going to love this phrase, give testimony. And he allegedly said of the night before, quote, "I called Jomette to come home because the Holy Spirit told me so, and it saved his life," end quote.
So he called Jomette home because he had some kind of revelation?
That's what Jennifer's saying, yeah.
I still don't understand the reason for the call, though. Like, did he just say, come home? And Jomette is just so loyal to his dad still that he leaves, no questions asked? Or was it something like, I know something bad's going to happen, get home, and then Jomette just left his fiancée to fend for herself?
Like, and if that's it, like, this would have been after an intruder had been there the night before.
When it's
You just
already-
change the locks.
Right, like when she's already scared and, like, maybe needs someone there. Also, if it's really the Holy Spirit speaking to Gary, why didn't he mention anything about Rachel?
Literally, Jennifer said that she asked him that, and he said, "I only received revelation about my son, not her." Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, the more conversations people at church had with Gary, the more suspicious they became of him. We haven't been able to corroborate this, but Jennifer said that many of the women in her ward called the police to report him acting strangely.
So then that means the police looked into him.
I mean, he's actually mentioned on the second page of the police chronology report from the night of Rachel's death, which in the timeline is before Rachel even had been pronounced dead. An officer noted the death threats from Gary that Rachel had reported weeks before. But get this, according to Kim and Ava, to this day, Gary has never been brought in for questioning. Now, Nicole asked how they knew this, and Kim said that she had asked the chief of police face to face why Gary was never interviewed. And he said, because we can't force somebody to talk.
Have they tried?
Kim said that the police told her that they left a phone message. They've tried to follow him. They've reached out in all these different ways, and he's just never responded. Much like, by the way, we reached out to him in all these different ways, and Gary has never responded to us. And we tried phone, mail, text. Nicole even stopped by his church in Gilbert, but we have not been able to make contact with him either.
I mean, if you have nothing to hide, why not clear your name?
Especially because according to Ava, Gary couldn't have been the one to pull the trigger.
What do you mean?
So she told us that Gary was home with their daughter the night of the shooting.
All night?
I don't know, but that's what Ava told us. And listen, I don't think she has a reason to want to give this guy an alibi.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think she's covering for him. In fact, basically in the same breath, she was saying he couldn't have pulled the trigger, but she was also telling us that Gary had a history of talking about hitmen. And Jennifer from his church backs this up too. They both told us that he would go around basically telling people that if you ever want to off someone, the best thing to do would be to hire someone who is really hard to track, and the case would just be impossible to solve.
Cool. So let me just play this out for a sec. If Gary hired someone to kill Rachel, where does the intruder the night before come in?
All I can put together is that maybe the first night was like a trial run or like a super inexperienced hitman.
Like one that would use a silencer but then kick down a door.
Yeah, like maybe the first one wasn't even like a hitman at all. Maybe the first one was someone Gary knew. Then like they go in,
realize they're not a hitman.
Yeah, Rachel wakes up and they're like, "Yup, yeah, in over my skis."
But also brought pickles.
Dude, the pickle. I am obsessed with the pickles. I was trying to look up like, was this a symbol? Like, what could this mean?
Yeah.
Like, I even made Nicole find out exactly what kind of pickles. Like, and Kim's like, it's a medium-sized standard jar of pickles. Kosher dill, in case you were wondering.
Got it.
And it didn't look like they had been opened.
Wait, so Kim saw the pickles herself?
Oh my God. I have to tell you about this part. So I think this encapsulates so well why Kim, Rachel's mom, has lost so much faith in the investigation and those leading it. So Kim knew about the pickle jar because after that person came into Rachel's apartment the first night.
She's like, hey, Mom, this weird thing happened, and also they left pickles.
Yeah, here's this super weird detail. Well, Kim said in the days after the shooting, when her and Todd were told by police that they could finally go get Rachel's things from the apartment, they opened the door, and the pickle jar is just like sitting right there on the counter.
Police didn't collect it.
I mean, Kim and Todd at the time assumed that they must have like at least like fingerprinted it or something, because by then they told police the story of the person who came in the night before and left the pickles. So they're assuming police, did the bare minimum.
Yeah, did their job.
Right, like fingerprinted it to see what strange person was in her place.
Right.
So Kim just like took it home along with Rachel's clothing, which by the way was also left behind. And the jar sat in her garage for a while until she ultimately decided that it was time to throw it away. But Kim has come to regret that now because she told Nicole that in one recent conversation with police, she asked them about the pickle jar. And they looked right at her and they said, "What pickle jar?"
You've got to be kidding me.
Nope. They said that they never saw a pickle jar.
What do you mean never saw one? There was nothing else in the apartment. It was literally just her bed and pickles.
And pickles, which this started to make us feel like maybe we were losing our minds or like the whole pickle thing got conflated with something else over the years. Like maybe people are mistaken. Like we just couldn't make sense of it. Why would you not take the one thing that might be evidence in an apartment where you have barely anything to work with?
Yeah, literally nothing.
So our amazing reporter, Nicole, combed through everything that we have from Gilbert PD. Files, blurred body cam footage, and there are no mention of pickles at all. Except, God bless this tenacious little reporter, there is one barely audible, offhanded comment caught at the very end of one officer's police body cam as he's walking through Rachel's apartment. And I've got it here for you to see.
Oh, watch the blood on the floor. Very empty. I'm guessing the store was closed. Barno. Alright, that's kind of weird. Kind of a weird thing to ask for, huh? No pickles.
No pickles.
No pickles. Now, here's the tricky part. I don't know the date of this video, and Gilbert PD wouldn't give us the date. But it must have been after the Hansons took the pickle jar home because Kim said that in the empty apartment, it was like impossible to miss.
And yet, we're here.
Listen, I don't even know how important the pickle jar is to this investigation, but now we will never know.
I mean, at the very least, it could have helped identify the first intruder.
Yeah, and by the way, speaking of other identifiable things, when the shooter kicked in Rachel's bedroom door, they left a pretty clear partial shoe print. Like, did police do anything with that? I mean, they left the door there. It's not like they took it.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. And listen, this is my call out to all the sneakerheads. Like, come out and tell me if you recognize this pattern on the door. But you can see, like, all of this, this is what makes Kim worried that she'll never know who killed her daughter. Kim said Gilbert police told her that they have exhausted every lead. But even Justin, the PI, doesn't know what Gilbert PD is up to, if anything. And he is probably the closest with the department of anyone that we spoke to. According to him, if this case is going to be solved, it's because someone courageous is going to come forward with information, which is why Kim wanted us to share Rachel's story with Crime Junkies. Coming up on 4 years, Kim's greatest fear is that Rachel's story will be forgotten. It's actually why she created Rachel's Rescue, which is a dog and puppy rescue in her daughter's memory to keep Rachel's story alive. We're actually going to link out to it in the show notes if you're in Arizona and looking for a new furry family member. Kim wants people to keep talking about Rachel, to know her case, and most importantly, to speak up if they know something, anything about her murder. So if you have even the smallest bit of information that could help move Rachel's case in the right direction, listen, there are a lot of ways you can come forward. You can reach out to the Gilbert Police Department at 480-503-6500. Or if you want to remain anonymous, you can call Silent Witness, 480-948-6377. There is a posted reward for information that's now up to $20,000. And listen, if you feel more comfortable or have any trouble reaching Gilbert PD, you can reach out to Justin Yentis at Arizona Investigative Associates by calling 602-252-2474. You can find all the source material for this episode on our website, crimejunkie.com.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Crime Junkie Podcast.
We'll be back next week with a brand new episode. Hi, Crime Junkies. I'm your host, Ashley Flowers.
And I'm Brit.
And today's story begins on a Wednesday evening in May 2020. It's just before 5:30 p.m., and Alicia Cordova is doing her dishes in her kitchen when her 5-year-old daughter, Capri, comes running in from the hallway saying something's wrong with Dad. She hands Mom her iPod Touch saying that her and her brother were FaceTiming with their dad, 40-year-old Nick Cordova, but then all of a sudden they heard a bang and their dad stopped responding. What Alicia saw and heard on that call has haunted her every day for the 6 years that she's been fighting to get her husband justice. And despite a mounting pile of circumstantial evidence that she's collected pointing to who might be responsible for his murder, no arrests or charges have ever been made in this case. Now it feels like the only way that this case will ever be solved is if we turn up the pressure on Gilbert Police Department. So let's go, Crime Junkies. This is the story of Nick Cordova.
May 27th, 2020, 17 hours, 30 minutes, 36 seconds.
It's okay to
What is your emergency?
This is Scottsdale.
Yes, someone. I'm on FaceTime with my husband. My kids are FaceTiming, and someone came in and started beating him. I think they have a gun.
What's your address?
He's at Gilbert Air, and Gilbert Air. I can't even look at the address right now. I'm freaking out.
Is he at work?
Yes, he's at work. His address is 511 West Guadalupe Road, number 13.
Okay, 511 West Guadalupe Road?
Yes. Nick!
Is he still there?
I can hear things moving around, but I don't see anyone. Dr. Capri, get out of the room, please, babe. Nick!
And you're calling from Scottsdale?
I'm calling from Scottsdale. We are FaceTiming. My kids are FaceTiming him, and then I just heard screaming. I thought it was a joke, and somebody came in.
Okay, this is your husband's work, and it's Gilbert Air?
Yes, my husband's work, Gilbert Air. It's just him and his manager that work there, but someone came in, and I think they're just beating him. I'm pretty sure I saw a gun. I still have him on FaceTime, but I can't see anything. Babe!
Okay,
Nick!
are you hearing anything?
I just hear moaning. I don't know if it's him or the manager.
Okay, I've got help on the way, okay?
Please hurry.
Okay.
Hurry. The cops are coming, babe.
How many people did you see in there?
I didn't see anyone. I just saw the phone rustling around, and then I'm pretty sure I saw a black glove or gun above I didn't hear any shots or anything, though. I could hear him saying, yelling, screaming. Someone was hitting him.
Okay.
My kids had the freaking phone and they saw it.
Okay. All right.
Who's there? Who is that? I'm on the phone. I have police on the phone. Who is that? Who's there? Pick up the phone. David who? Dave. Dave, pick up the phone. Got it. What is going on? Where's my husband? I have the police on the phone.
You don't know who he
where's
is?
Nick?
Do you know who this gentleman is?
He's not there? Someone came in. Is he okay? What's going on? Dave!
Ma'am, tell me what's happening. Who is the guy you're talking to?
His coworker's there, his partner. Oh my gosh, is he okay? Dave!
Is that his coworker?
Dave, tell me what's going on. Is he okay?
Ma'am, who is Dave?
No!
Can you please answer my questions? Ma'am.
Dave's his partner. Dave's his partner. He just came into the building. I don't know.
Okay, I need you to tell me what is happening. I've got officers on the way.
I don't know. He's just saying, oh my God. He grabbed the phone and just said, oh my God. Dave! Is he okay? Is he breathing? Dave, answer me! Dave, is he okay? Is he okay? Dave, what is going on?
At this point, Alicia can't take all of this unraveling through a screen. So keeping the FaceTime going, she tells her kids to get their shoes on and rushes them into the car to drive to Nick's office herself. During the 20-minute ride over, as she is hauling down the freeway, Alicia is calling her mom and then Nick's mom, who calls Nick's sister and Nick's nephew, everyone she can think of who needs to know that something is wrong. When she finally gets to the offices of Gilbert Air, the HVAC company that Nick owned with his partner Dave Sweetman, she parks her car behind some bushes, kind of like away from the building, because at this point she is thinking that Nick might be hurt and she doesn't want her kids to see that if he comes out beat up or bleeding or something. So she gives them her phone to play on, tells them to stay in the car, that their dad is strong, he's going to be fine, and then she beelines it for the building. And that's when she sees the crime scene tape and what looks to her like 1 million police officers everywhere. And her first thought is to look around for ambulances. Like, if Nick was attacked, they should be taking him to the hospital. But there isn't any ambulance in sight. And that's when Alicia starts running. She runs right through the yellow tape yelling, "Where is my husband? What happened?" And officers are trying to hold her back, but no one is answering her questions. She said she felt like she was standing there for 20 minutes just repeating, "What the happened?" And after what feels like a lifetime, finally, an officer pulls her aside and delivers one line that will change the trajectory of her life forever. "I'm sorry to tell you, your husband's dead." And that's when Alicia just loses it. She just falls to her knees, crying uncontrollably, and all while trying to make sure that her kids can't see her do it. Now, officers write in their reports that Alicia is inconsolable and in disbelief of the situation. But even in her state, she has the wherewithal to ask one question: where is Dave?
Is Dave still alive?
No, yeah, he is, but the way that they encounter Dave, and honestly, the whole scene is really bizarre. So according to the police file, when a Gilbert police officer arrived, the first thing he saw as he walked up to the front door was someone peeking through the blinds of the office window. And as the officer got closer with his weapon at the ready, he heard a man saying through the window, "I'm Dave, I'm Dave." So the officer ordered Dave to open the door and come out, but instead, Dave barely opens it, hands the officer a bloody gun by the barrel, and said, quote, "I'm his partner. That's my gun. I'm sorry. Oh my God." Now, the officer put the gun on the ground outside and then tried to open the front door to walk in, but it wouldn't budge.
Is Dave blocking them from coming in?
No, Dave's not blocking them. Nick actually was. His body was lying on the floor on his side with a pool of blood around him, completely unresponsive. And he had blood all over his face, and it looked like there was a bullet hole in his left cheek. Now, I don't know what protocol is when you need to get inside a crime scene and something at the scene itself is preventing that. Personally, I don't know, I might have tried to find another entrance.
Yeah.
This officer, though, decided to just push through the door until Nick's body moved enough for him to squeeze through. And once he's in, he saw a clear sign there of a struggle. So just to give you a picture, when you enter the front door of the office, you walk into this little lobby space, and it has like a reception desk. From there, if you go through the first doorway on the left, you can get to the office space where Nick and Dave's desks were. Now, Nick's desk, when you walk through that entryway, it was the first one beyond the doorway, and Dave's was about 12 feet away near the far wall. Now, according to the police report, Nick's desk had been pushed out of place, which they can tell from like the indents that were in the carpet. And there are just these things strewn all over the floor, like Nick's monitor. There's money, business cards, this black electrical box, a bag of what they report looks like contraband. They find a human tooth, a potato with a hole gouged out of one side. And I've seen people online actually take to assuming that maybe that potato was like used as a silencer, but that is not stated anywhere in the police report. But there are multiple bullet holes around the room. So there is one above the light switch, there's another in the lobby desk, and then the window frame behind Nick's desk has one as well. Now, I mentioned money. There is some money by Dave's desk too, though his desk itself appears, quote, not to have been disrupted by the struggle. But the bottom right drawer is open, and inside of it is an empty handgun case and an empty magazine.
So, I hate to repeat her question, but I'm going to ask exactly what Alicia asked. Where is Dave?
Well, while one officer was getting his bearings, Dave was, quote, acting hysterical and pacing back and forth. So, right then and there, another officer actually detained him and put him in cuffs. And it's in that moment that Dave spoke up again. And he said, quote, "I'm his partner. 2 guys came in here. They left. They ran." End quote.
So Dave's in cuffs. Is he being arrested?
No, the officer specifically informed Dave that he was not under arrest. He was just being detained for questioning. And right there at the scene, Dave is Mirandized. And he gives kind of this hasty interview. And he says basically, he was at his desk when 2 Hispanic men wearing green shirts and face masks came into the building trying to sell Nick Freon, which, do you know what Freon is?
Yeah, it's used in like older air conditioning units, right?
Yes, I did not know what Freon was. I had to look it up, but you're totally right. So it's something that could be common, or at least could be common to sell in an HVAC world. Right. But what I found out was Gilbert Air definitely didn't buy Freon like that. But Dave said that for some reason, it looked like Nick knew these guys.
Knew these guys in masks?
Well, when I say masks, I thought the same thing, but these were COVID masks, not like ski masks. So
this is happening like May 2020, right?
Exactly. Okay. So I think you can kind of see a face where you could recognize someone. Anyway, Dave says that the men said something to Nick, and then there was some kind of commotion, and then they turned to Dave and started pointing their guns at him. So Dave says he gave them his wallet and gave them the money in his pocket, quote, everything he had, and then the men hit him in the back of the head with what Dave thought was one of their guns, and then they fled the scene.
Wait, so when was Nick shot then?
Well, Dave says he doesn't know, says that he never even heard a gunshot.
Did they knock him unconscious?
He doesn't know. He's just basically saying he doesn't remember much after he got hit in the head. Now, aside from Dave, there was no one else in the office at the time of the shooting. The office manager who worked there, Lynn, she gets to the scene once she gets word about everything that's going on. And she tells police that when she left work that day at around 5 o'clock, only Nick and Dave were inside. But she knows what Alicia and Dave all know, that there are several surveillance cameras inside the building, which Dave says should have recorded everything. So while Gilbert PD sends an analyst to the scene to review that footage, an officer escorts Dave to a patrol car so they can do a more formal interview with him down at the station. But right about then comes the first sign that something might be off. Because remember how Dave said that he gave the intruders his wallet and his money in his pockets? And
yeah, he said that he gave them everything he had, right?
Exactly. Well, imagine this officer's surprise when he's patting Dave down and finds more than $1,000 cash in his front left Some cases fade from headlines. Some never made it there to begin with. I'm Ashley Flowers, and on my podcast, The Deck, I tell you the stories of cold cases featured on playing cards distributed in prisons, designed to spark new leads and bring long overdue justice. Because these stories deserve to be heard, and the loved ones of these victims still deserve answers. Are you ready to be dealt in? Listen to The Deck now, wherever you get your podcasts. When Dave is confronted with the fact that his story is already crumbling, he clarifies to the officer, "No, they didn't take all my money. I only gave the suspects the money in my front right pocket."
But that's not what everything I have means.
No, definitely not.
And how much cash is this guy keeping in, all the pockets of his pants?
I think that would have been a great follow-up question to ask, but I don't see that being asked in the records that I have. So Dave gets driven down to the station, and just after 7 p.m., that's when he's interviewed. And his story now is this. It was a robbery gone wrong. Dave says that he was getting ready to leave work when the crime took place. So he says he sees Nick on the phone as he's walking towards the exit, waves, gives him a fist bump, as bros are known to do.
Naturally.
But then when Dave got to the front door, he realized that he had forgotten a bill on his desk or something. So he turned around, and then just as he started looking for this thing on his desk, he heard the front door chime. And then he looked up and saw the two men. One of them, he says, approached Nick with what looked like a box of Freon, and then the yelling and fighting started. David looked up from his desk, saw one of the men coming toward him with a gun pointed at him, and then Dave says that the man told him to get on the ground and give him his money, which Dave did.
Kind of.
Kind of. And then the man hits Dave on the head, which he says might have knocked him unconscious because then he really doesn't remember anything after that. And listen, officers do find that Dave has a cut on his right hand and a lump on the right side of his head.
So then Dave had to have been unconscious when Nick was shot.
Well, except his story keeps going. Now he says that he heard Nick in a struggle, and then he also heard a loud bang, but that he didn't see anything because all of his focus was on the guy that was robbing him. And he says he really came to again when he heard Alicia yelling for Nick through the FaceTime call. He could see and hear Alicia, but he wasn't sure if she could see or hear him. So holding the phone, Dave walked out to the lobby where he found Nick, shot and bleeding. He says he put the phone down to check Nick for signs of life, but got nothing. And that's when he says he went back to his desk to get his handgun and check for suspects in the rest of the building. And when he got back to the lobby, that's when first responders arrived and he handed them his now bloodied gun through the crack of the door. Now, Dave says he didn't notice anything distinguishable about the suspects who robbed him, other than the fact that one's gun was, quote, big and black, and it made him follow the suspect's orders.
And what's Dave's gun look like?
It's a 9mm Sig Sauer that he says he got a month ago as a result of this child custody issue he was having with a woman who, I guess he had previously had an affair with this woman. They had a child. We tried reaching out to her. She declined to speak with us because the custody battle that he, quote unquote, got this gun for was actually still ongoing.
Now, 6 years later.
Yes, still in the custody battle 6 years later.
Oof.
Now, Dave says that he always kept his gun in that desk drawer and he has never fired it, not even today. But that day in the office, he had chambered around while he was checking the place for suspects.
Okay, so you mentioned it before. I have to bring it up. Just give it to me. What's on the surveillance videos? Because, they should be able to tell us if his story is, lines up with that, right?
One would think, because there are surveillance cameras basically all over this building. The lobby's got one, the warehouse, even the outside. The one place that doesn't have a camera is the office space where, according to Dave, the struggle took place.
Why?
I don't know. We asked Alicia, Nick's wife, and she said she had no idea. But even she thought it was kind of odd. That's the one place that didn't have a camera. But listen, the cameras that do exist might be able to confirm some things. Officers at the crime scene start reviewing the tapes within hours of being called to the scene. And they mostly do corroborate Dave's story. 2 suspects entered the building. One was holding a box of Freon, but they're actually on this footage able to see that the box was empty. It had some kind of panel cut out of it, and they were using it to conceal the gun when they first came in. And they see that there is some kind of commotion and yelling that can be heard off camera, presumably in the office. And then Nick is seen running out of the office into the lobby toward the front door, and that's where he ends up getting shot.
Can you see the shooter?
You can, because he shoots Nick in the lobby right in view of the cameras. Officers also note that right after the shooting, they can hear Dave saying, "Help me," off camera. Now, the outdoor camera then shows these two suspects, driving away from the scene right at 5:31 p.m. And they're in a red and silver Ford F-150. It has no front license plate, of course. And I asked what year it was. It looks like it was pre-2003, so a little bit older for the time. And there is faded paint on the roof of it. I just don't know the exact year, but this is an older model.
So, based on these videos, Dave was telling the truth.
Yeah, at this point, investigators write in the file that after seeing the surveillance footage, they no longer suspect Dave in the homicide. However, quote, his involvement remained unclear, end quote.
Meaning what?
They did not elaborate. I mean, I'm assuming they don't believe that he shot the gun, but
Right.
Maybe they are not eliminating the possibility that he was involved in some other way.
Which, makes sense, right? Why else would you lie about the money in your pocket? There's just, that's weird, right?
Yes, I have left something out. So there is another red flag, too. When Alicia was first told that her husband was dead, she didn't just ask, "Where's Dave?" Her full sentence to police was, "Where's Dave? He probably had something to do with this." When she was able to be interviewed that day on the scene, she elaborated on why that was her first thought. And when our reporter, Nicole Kagan, spoke to Alicia this year, she gave us the full backstory. So everything I'm about to say comes directly from her and from police documents. She said that a few years before all of this, back in 2017, Nick's passion was personal training, but he had been doing HVAC work for a while and decided around that time that he wanted to be his own boss, run his own company. So it felt like perfect timing when that year this guy named Frank, who Nick used to go riding in the dunes with, told him that he owned half of this successful company called Gilbert Air, but he was burnt out and he was looking to sell his share for actually super cheap.
Super successful, but super cheap? Feels like a red flag to me.
And, well, there was a red flag that Frank was pretty upfront about. He told Nick that he had a co-owner who was basically the money guy while he ran the business. But this co-owner, Dave Sweetman, was a, quote, shady POS. And so that's why Frank wanted to get out.
Shady how?
He didn't really specify, but if you look up Dave's records, you'll see charges for assault, disorderly conduct, a bunch of driving infractions, fraud, and trespassing, among other things. Now, Alicia and Nick didn't know these specifics, but regardless, Nick was the kind of guy who loved rising to a challenge. It's something that was instilled in him from childhood, being raised by a single mom who had him when she was just 16. Nick's grandma and grandpa actually helped raise him, and when his mom later had two other children with men who were not the most present, Nick sort of took on the father figure role to raise them. So Nick chose to see this as a golden opportunity. He got another one of his friends to buy in too, so they would each own 25% of the company, while Dave Sweetman would keep the remaining 50%. But less than a week before the deal was going to be signed, Nick's friend dropped out, said that he just got this weird feeling.
A weird feeling about Dave?
No, not what he said, just a weird feeling that he was worried about the business not succeeding, and he didn't think that he could make a big leap like that. It's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But this wasn't for Nick, and he wasn't going to let this be a deal breaker. Remember, the guy liked a challenge, so he just decided to do it on his own. Alicia, though, she was more wary of Dave. But Nick managed to convince her that everything was going to be okay. Great, even. He was over the moon to have something that was his. And seeing how excited he was, how could Alicia not support him? So the deal was done, and Nick took an ownership stake in 2018. And at first, everything did seem good. Alicia said that Nick very much kept his business and personal lives separate. For 2018 and 2019, she barely even met Dave, only ever was around him 3 times. Things seemed to be going smoothly. But then, about 6 months before Nick would be killed, things started unraveling. Out of nowhere, Nick came home one night and told Alicia, "I know it sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, I feel like someone's been watching me." Which at the time, Alicia said that she just kind of brushed off because it just sounded so absurd. And she just tried to comfort Nick, reassure him that everything was fine. But then Alicia tells police that 3 months after that, in March of 2020, Nick told her that Dave took $30,000 out of their company account, which he had never done before. And when Nick asked him about it, Dave said that he had this debt that he had to pay, but he would replace it before payroll was due. And that's when Nick told Alicia, I think I need to get out of this business with this guy. I don't know what I got myself into. And he told her that he thought Dave was doing something possibly illegal with the other companies that he owned. And he's I don't know what's happening, but I don't want any part of whatever it is. Now, Alicia said Nick's stress level went through the roof at this point, but it only got worse come April, when Dave not only doesn't pay back the money that he already took, but he takes out another $15,000 from the company. Then in May, Nick told Alicia again, "I just can't shake this feeling that somebody is watching me." And then what he said next came out as a joke, but there's nothing funny about it now. She told police that he was worried Dave would, quote, hire a hitman to take him out so Dave could collect the insurance money, end quote.
What insurance money?
Alicia had the same question when Nick said that. What do you mean insurance money?
Yeah.
And that is when Nick first told her that at some point, Dave told him that to protect the business, for each of them, Dave and Nick should take out life insurance policies against each other.
And is that something that Dave had when the previous owner, that Frank guy, was there?
No, but not for a lack of trying. According to the police file, Dave repeatedly tried to get this Frank guy to do the same thing, but Frank refused, telling Dave that he wanted to be worth more alive than dead.
Good advice.
Especially when you have a shifty business partner. Now, hearing about this policy, at the time, it really shook Alicia because she said Nick was not a worrier. He never seemed to get stressed about anything. But after he told her that, he was just tossing and turning in bed the whole night. So by the time Memorial Day weekend came around, Nick was in dire need of a reset. So the Cordova family decided that they were going to take a camping trip together. According to Alicia, when they got back on Monday night, she and the kids begged Nick to just take the next day off so they could just keep this family time going. I imagine that it probably felt like this great reprieve, right? Mm-hmm. And he did, which made Wednesday Nick's first day back in the office after that long weekend. And that is the day that he would be killed.
So what did the office manager have to say about Dave? She's there on the scene by the time they're hearing this from Alicia, right?
Mm-hmm. They talked to her on the scene when she arrives too, and Lynn is her name. Mm-hmm. And she told police that her and Dave didn't get along, but she did say something strange. She said that recently he had been acting strange. He started coming into the office more frequently and being more friendly to her, though he would mostly just ask about money. Lynn said that he seemed quote-unquote obsessed with money, and she would hear him yelling at Nick about it. And here's the really interesting thing that she added when she was talking to police. So the day before the shooting, that would have been Tuesday, May 26th. This is the Tuesday after Memorial Day weekend. Now, Nick was supposed to be in the office that day, but as we know, he makes this last-minute decision to stay home with his family. But apparently, that whole day, Dave kept asking Lynn over and over, where's Nick? When's Nick gonna get in? When's he getting back? And she just said that Dave kept pacing back and forth and leaving the office for short periods of time. And she tells police that when Dave came into work the day of the shooting, he was quieter than usual, and he wasn't joking around like he usually did. And at one point in the day, he and Nick closed the door to their office, and it sounded like they were having an argument. But Lynn was listening to the radio, so she couldn't hear exactly what it was that they were saying. Now, I have to mention, officers weren't just asking Lynn about Dave. They also asked her about Alicia and Nick's relationship. And Lynn says that she wished her and her husband had a relationship like theirs. She said that Nick was giving and kind, and she didn't know a single person who didn't like him. And this is a common theme, by the way. Another employee says that everybody loved Nick, and he never saw him get angry or even raise his voice once at work. And by the way, if it wasn't already clear what kind of guy Nick was, Alicia said that she and at least 50 other people stayed at the crime scene that whole first night, refusing to leave until Nick was brought out. They waited in the parking lot until the sun came up. And that whole time, Alicia was still asking officers where Dave was and telling them that she believed he was responsible for Nick's death. But once they reviewed the surveillance footage, they told her that he wasn't the one who killed Nick, that he was released, and that there was nothing they could do.
What do you mean there was nothing you can do? I mean, no one's proven to me that he wasn't involved. Just because there are two other guys can't mean he's cleared. I mean, they're only hours in at this point. Plus, Alicia literally told them Nick was worried about Dave hiring a hitman.
These are the exact reasons that Alicia is frustrated. She doesn't understand why nothing more can be done and why no one seems to be giving her an adequate explanation. So over the course of 12 hours or so, she pleads with them, throwing out everything she knows about the insurance stuff and suggesting a hit for hire until around 6 a.m. when Nick is finally wheeled out of the office in a body bag. Officers give Alicia his keys and his wallet, which, by the way, his wallet still has money in it, but they tell her that they have to take his wedding ring to test for DNA.
Why just his wedding ring?
I was just going to say, we asked Alicia, she doesn't know why. I'm assuming that they collected maybe things that they thought would be the most likely to have assailant DNA on it. And maybe it was clear the wallet wasn't touched or something. I don't really know.
Which would make the robbery theory even harder to buy.
100%. So Nick is taken away. And regardless of what the police were telling Alicia about Dave and the surveillance video, at that point, she's terrified. So she immediately goes to the Scottsdale police station to file a restraining order against Dave. But since Dave hadn't actually been charged with any wrongdoing at that point, she's told that she doesn't really have any grounds for that. However, hearing the circumstances of her husband's death and, hearing why she's scared, detectives do tell her that actually keeping a line open with Dave might be helpful. Maybe Dave will communicate with her, say something to her that changes things or conflicts with his original story. And listen, this guy's instincts, whoever told her this, they weren't far off, because 3 days later, Dave does reach out to her, not to talk about the case, but to ask if he can help with funeral arrangements. But Alicia is in no place to try and use this and play detective right now. She can't even stomach the guy, especially not offering to help with the funeral of her husband, who she is suspicious he may have had killed. So Alicia declines. And in fact, she tells Dave, it'd honestly be best if you don't attend the funeral at all. At this point, Alicia and her children are staying with her cousin, and then after that with Nick's cousins. And then after that, Nick's cousins and friends take turns sleeping on her couch with a gun at the ready, because Alicia is still terrified of someone coming after her and her children. She doesn't know when she'll ever feel safe again, but she definitely doesn't right in the aftermath when whoever was behind Nick's murder is just out there.
So what are Gilbert police doing to find those men on the video footage?
Well, starting on the morning that Nick's body was removed from the building, they did begin canvassing the neighborhood. But it seems the only real lead that they get is figuring out that it was that red and silver truck. So they spend over a week searching not only for the truck itself, which was, again, like I said, this older two-tone red and silver extended cab Ford F-150, but they are also going to all of the surrounding businesses looking for witnesses or additional surveillance cameras that may have captured the people or the truck. And they actually did end up hitting pay dirt at the AM/PM about 2 minutes down the road from the office. Not only does the convenience store have surveillance footage of the truck in question, they also have surveillance footage of one of the men who was inside of it. On June 12th, just over 2 weeks after the shooting, Gilbert PD releases the footage from the AM/PM to the public to see if anyone can identify the mystery man who they say was in the passenger seat of this vehicle that they're looking for in connection to this case.
Wait, when is the footage from?
So the footage that they get is from the day of the shooting, actually just literal minutes after the shooting based on the timestamps. And listen, I gotta say, this is close to, if not the clearest image of a suspect's face I have ever seen from surveillance footage in a case. Like, anyone who knows this guy would be able to recognize him instantaneously, which makes it so wild to me that they're not putting it out to the public until June 12th. But in the footage, here is what we see. So this truck in question pulls up to a pump at the gas station, literally 2 minutes after the shooting. Then there is a guy who police describe as about 5'8" with a heavyset build, wearing a dark-colored t-shirt, blue jeans, and dark-colored boots that gets out of the truck and walks through the gas station parking lot up to the door of the AM/PM and then enters the store at 5:33 p.m. He goes to the counter where we get this direct shot of his face from a camera that must be like over the counter somewhere. Now, he talks briefly with the clerk and then he goes out, fills his tank before the truck pulls out at 5:36. And all we know is that it drives northbound.
I mean, do we know what he said to the clerk?
Nothing important. They talked to the clerk and they said that this guy was like a non-conversationalist, just like, $10 on pump 7 kind of guy. And he, of course, paid cash. And they're like, listen, I probably at this point couldn't even pick the guy out of a lineup.
So is this a third guy, or did the shooters change clothes? Because they weren't wearing those like bright green shirts in the video from the business.
No, you're right. They don't think, at least from what I can tell, they don't think this is a third man. They think whoever this is took off the mask and either removed the bright green shirt or like switched outfits or whatever. But this is the guy that they're looking for, or one of them. Now, Alicia, Lynn, and other employees at Gilbert Air all are shown this gas station footage, but no one recognizes this guy.
Not even Dave?
He tells Alicia that he didn't know him either. If tips come in from the public about who this man is, Alicia is never told about it. And I can't tell you about it because that info about the surveillance footage, that is the last piece of information that comes validated from the police file. Everything else in the file is redacted. Like, we're talking over 200 pages of just blacked out everything.
I mean, did they give Alicia any updates?
Well, early on in the investigation, Alicia said that there was one Gilbert PD detective who she met with every couple of weeks who seemed really invested in the case. He gave her a full case update around the 1-year mark through this PowerPoint presentation. And she felt hopeful, maybe the wait would be worth it. And all of the months of waiting and fear were going to lead to something, because this guy promises her that arrests are going to be made. But then, in a story that has become all too familiar, 2 weeks after that meeting, she basically gets a call notifying her that that guy's off the case. The new detective says that the original guy got moved down to patrol, and when she asks if, that happened willingly, the new detective was basically sometimes being a detective can just take a toll on people, and it's not uncommon for people to have to take a break. But Alicia has always suspected that the demotion was because maybe that first guy, that one detective who showed her the PowerPoint, maybe that guy told her too much. Or worse, maybe he screwed something up with Nick's case. Now, we did reach out to Gilbert PD for comment, and they said that they are still actively investigating but cannot disclose further information at this time.
So, wait, did they look into Dave Moore and all the insurance stuff? Did he get a payout when Nick died?
So as far as I can tell from the file, police did a follow-up interview with Dave Sweetman and even his girlfriend, Susan, and that was in August of 2020. I have no idea what came of that. As for the insurance stuff, that would go on for years. It started, though, just 5 days after the shooting. That is when Dave texted Alicia this string of messages about signing some documents for the claim. And Alicia, who lost her husband 5 days ago.
In front of Dave, by the way.
Yeah, who is worried that he was killed for insurance money, was like, no,
Maybe like not now.
How about you let me bury my husband first and then I'll figure all of this out? But Dave comes back to her and he's like, okay, but like, just so you know, you should be getting around like $500,000. Now, Alicia, she didn't know anything about these policies, but in her mind, she's thinking like, okay, like the policy pays out to the business. Nick owned half of the business, so it must have been $1 million policy, right? Split 50-50. Makes sense. But just to confirm, she decided to go checking through Nick's emails. And that's when she found out that there was another policy. And both policies together would pay out not $1 million, but $8 million.
What?
So Alicia refuses to sign the documents, which according to her, does not sit well with Dave. He goes off on her about how she's like making this so difficult and that it's really Nick's fault for not having mapped everything out for her. And that's when Alicia had had enough. She gets a lawyer of her own and decides to push back. Now, they find an agreement that Nick signed when he bought into the business, which stated that in the event of a death, everything would be split 50-50. So like 6 months after the shooting, Alicia's lawyer is like, okay, listen, now that we have this, you can sign the documents and then we can file this claim, done and done, right? Wrong. As soon as they file, they get a call from the insurance company that's confused because they say, quote, we already got your signed documents.
What do you mean they already got her signed documents?
Alicia has no idea what they're talking about. She's like, this is the first time I've ever signed anything. If you have signed documents, somebody forged my signature. And the company's first question is, well, do you know of anybody that would want to do that?
I mean, I have some thoughts.
Alicia can think of only one person. Dave Not So Sweetman, which is what she has taken to calling him by that point.
So what does this mean for Alicia? Can she still get her half of the money?
Well, so what ends up happening is she files a police report claiming that Dave forged her signature, but weeks later she's told that there's not enough evidence to charge him. And even though she has that document stating that she's meant to get half of the insurance payouts, there are loads of other documents with stipulations that her lawyers and Dave's lawyers just cannot seem to get on the same page about. So after 3 more years of legal back and forth, in 2024, Alicia and Dave finally get everything settled out of court and each receives an undisclosed payout.
So while all of that was going on, was Gilbert Air still in business and operating?
No, Gilbert Air ran out of money 9 months after Nick's death, and they had to end up closing.
Even though there was supposedly an $8 million payout to the business when Nick died.
Yeah, I don't know what Dave did with the money that he got or if it got tied up at some point. But for some reason, it doesn't seem like it was used to keep that business operational, the one that Nick and now his family owned half of. Instead, Alicia says that, after Gilbert Air closes down, Dave took the client list and started a new business called Arizona Family Air that the Cordovas have no stake in, and he continues to run it out of his house.
Continues, to this day?
To this very day. We called the company for comment, but as of this recording, we have not heard back. Dave and his girlfriend Susan didn't respond to us either, though Dave did tell Fox 10 Phoenix back in 2024 that Nick's case was, quote, the most traumatic ordeal he's experienced, end quote. Over the years, Nick's case starts cycling through different detectives. Alicia continues trying to meet with whoever is on the case every few months, but it's just so hard for her to believe them when she keeps hearing the same thing. We're rechecking things, we're re-looking through evidence, but each time nothing happens. To this day, she's still never been given a copy of his autopsy, and we couldn't obtain it through public records requests either. Authorities have also never released any kind of results related to firearms or firearm testing. I don't know what kind of gun was used in the shooting still. And I don't know if they ever confirmed Dave's story that the gun he handed over to them had never been fired.
I was going to say, if they haven't released what kind of gun was used on Nick, they don't know that it was, we don't know that it wasn't.
Don't know. Right. According to the police file, I know they got some lab results back in July of 2020. Now, what items were tested and where, can't tell you. That is all redacted, and they have never shared that information with Alicia. The only unredacted part says that the only DNA profiles on the physical evidence collected belongs to either Nick or Dave. But the thing to remember is, without context, that could mean nothing. They both worked in that office. So if items were tested that are like regularly used by both of them, like that doesn't mean anything. Like,
yeah, and even without someone else's DNA, like I keep thinking about the guy on the surveillance footage. Like, how have they not identified him
I
yet?
know. Alicia cannot help but wonder. The only thing she can think of, I should say, is like she thinks that like every time this case is handed to someone else, maybe things are like slipping through the cracks.
It's a game of telephone.
Yeah, and like she told us that there have been specific case details that she's mentioned while like speaking with detectives, and they've been like, "Oh, we didn't know that," which is like not the thing you want to hear from the guy in charge of solving your husband's case. And listen, people all over the internet have been quick to call out Gilbert PD for all sorts of things, alleging corruption and dirty police work. Just look up the Gilbert Goons case if you want to get an idea. There is no proof of anything like that we know of. But I can say that the department is extremely protective of their public records. And this is not the first case of theirs that we've even covered.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a couple of months ago, we released an episode on the 2022 shooting of Rachel Hansen. And her family expressed the same frustrations that Alicia has with Gilbert PD. And what's more, in February of 2026, this article came out in the Arizona Republic by Maritza Dominguez saying that the Arizona Attorney General's office is reviewing claims that the town of Gilbert may have illegally destroyed or withheld police records, which is an allegation that could have huge implications for unresolved cases in the community like Nick's.
Yeah.
Now, as of this recording, the Attorney General's review has not confirmed any illegal destruction tied specifically to any of these cases, and Gilbert PD has denied all allegations of destroying or withholding records. But trust that we will be following this very closely.
Yeah.
But this experience that she and others have had with Gilbert PD is one of the many reasons that Alicia began asking the department if she could see the surveillance footage from Gilbert Air herself. They say no to her a couple of times, but Alicia was not playing around. She put in a formal records request, hired a lawyer, and in an absolutely shocking turn of events, the PD actually agreed to let her see it. So in March of 2025, she went into the station with Nick's mom, and together they sit down and watch this video. And Alicia notices a number of things on the footage police have that were not included in the report. She told us that right before the shooting, when Dave was getting ready to leave the office, he went to the front door and peeked through the blinds. And you can see the red and silver truck pulling up on the outdoor camera as he does this. And then he walks back into the office. And Alicia is literally in the police department. I mean, can you imagine? She's viewing this footage and she's like, guys, pause the tape. That's what she says. And she's like, isn't that enough right there? Why would he be peeking through the blinds unless he was expecting somebody?
Yeah, and his story is that he went back into the office because he forgot something, right?
That's what he told police, which whatever, maybe. But tell me, how many times have you peeked out of the blinds before you leave the office at night?
Only if I was waiting for someone.
Yeah. And as Alicia continues watching, she sees the two men arrive in their bright-colored shirts, masks, and she sees that they have gloves on.
Which explains the lack of suspect DNA at the scene.
Yes, and she says that they're wearing these big construction hats, too. Now, she says one guy is tall and slender, the other is chubbier.
And I'm assuming that's the one that's caught on the
tape.
PM tape.
That's my guess, yeah. And then, of course, everything happening in the office we know is off camera. But guess what? She says there's audio. Alicia says that she can hear Nick on the phone with her kids. And then all of a sudden, you can hear a commotion and Nick just yelling for help.
And what about Dave?
She says she doesn't hear Dave saying anything. And then all of a sudden, Nick comes into view. He's running through the lobby. And she says that he was really close to the door when the suspect comes up behind him and just execution style shoots him once in the back of the head, causing him to fall to the ground. And that was it.
I can't believe she had to watch that.
I can't believe they let her watch that. Because to her, I mean, not only is it traumatic, but
just confirms everything that she's been feeling.
So I'm saying this just makes her more suspicious of Dave, who to this day still has not been charged or even named publicly as a person of interest or a suspect in this case.
But how?
I mean, from the jump, the PD ruled him out as the shooter from the surveillance footage. And according to Alicia, they never had been able to find a paper trail between him and the two suspects.
Okay, but what's the cash situation, though? Like, where did the $45,000 go that he took out from the company before all this happened? Like, can we trace where that went, or where every penny of the insurance payout went? Like, you're not writing checks to hitmen, right?
Right. This is like, I would be looking for missing money. Yeah.
Also, I don't understand how they can say that, we can't find a paper trail between the two suspects when supposedly you don't know who the two suspects are. Like,
right.
The paper trail could lead you to them. Like,
yeah, to me, in order to rule out a connection definitively, you would have to dig deep into this man, right? Like, do a financial audit almost.
There are forensic accountants for a reason.
Not like you have to do more than one follow-up interview, which is like, I see a follow-up interview. Again, lots of redacted stuff in the file. And I don't know what are in those pages. There are over 200 of them, remember? But even 200 pages, it doesn't feel like enough if they were to have investigated Dave or even his past financial crimes.
I forgot about those. Like, he had a history of scammy shit, fraud and stuff. Like, yes, please dig into those.
Yes, someone's past can tell you a lot about them, which is why we felt it necessary to look into Dave's past to tell this story.
Always go a layer deeper.
And listen, what our reporter Nicole found sent us head first down a rabbit hole that we could have never seen coming. You see, it turns out nearly 7 years before Nick was shot, someone else close to Dave died under mysterious circumstances. Now, this wasn't mentioned in the police report or online news coverage of Nick's case at all. In fact, there is no media coverage of this other case at all. And that other case is the death of Laura Sweetman, Dave's wife.
What?
What we found needs an entire episode of its own. So, Crime Junkies, come back next Monday to hear Laura Sweetman's story. Or you can listen to it right now if you're in the fan club. And if you're not a member of the Crime Junkie fan club, now is the perfect time, because now through April 14th, you can join the Crime Junkie fan club for free. So check out the link in our show notes to get your first month on us. Listen, make no mistake. Alicia isn't going away. She feels like it's up to her to keep Nick's story alive, and she does every press interview she can. She posts on TikTok. She continues meeting with the police department, and she'll keep it all going until the people who killed Nick are finally behind bars. So if you have any information about the 2020 death of Nicholas Nick Cordova in Gilbert, Arizona, you can reach out to the Gilbert Police Department at 480-503-6500. Or if you prefer to remain anonymous, you can reach out to Silent Witness at 480-948-6377. The posted reward for information is now up to $20,000. And as always, you can reach out to us by emailing tips@audiochuck.com. You can find all the source material for this episode on our website, crimejunkie.com.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Crime Junkie Podcast.
We'll be back next week with Laura Sweetman's story. But don't forget, you can listen right now by joining the Crime Junkie fan club. Links in the show notes.